This story is about a young white-haired youth who discovered his cultivation abilities. Not too long ago, unscrupulous humans dumped nuclear effluent into the sea on this world, causing a large number of marine organisms to mutate. The Heroes Association sent two S-class heroes to the scene, and the incident was broadcast live on the radio. The sea creatures became aggressive, jumping out of the water and trying to attack the heroes. To solve this situation came the hero, Nimble Man. He believed that these people have no shame or conscience. He did not understand how many nuclear emissions were released to create so many mutated creatures. Nimble Man went into battle. He used his power to repel the creatures' attacks. He threw lightning bolts at the mutated fish. The hero was not having much success. The creatures were getting bigger and bigger. There was no end to them. The mutated fish flew straight at Nimble Man. The hero was confident in his abilities. He was going to take them all down at once. The man began to use his superpowers. Nimble Man decided to use a lightning force technique, the sea tornado. He created two blue-colored vortices in his hands. The next moment, they transformed into a huge tornado that sucked all the aggressive sea creatures inside it. Nimble Man's battle with the sea creatures was broadcast live. Anyone could watch it. The hero's exploits were watched by Joe Shuntian, who had no superpowers. He was at school at the time, and he admired the hero's strength. The guy recognized the place where the battle was held. It was near the sea. Joe Shuntian wanted to sneak out of class and take one look at it. In this world, superpowers were everywhere, and heroes were honored by all the inhabitants. Their images were on billboards, and people thanked them for their deeds. And those who do not have superpowers could only be in secure facilities under the jurisdiction of the world government. That's what the protagonist was. The boy decided to try to escape from school after all. He managed to stealthily go outside. He ran with all his legs to get there in time. The guy wanted to get the superhero's autograph. The base of the nuclear power plant was underwater at great depths. It was a large guarded building. There was another hero under the water. It was a girl. She was relaying information over the comms. The girl had already finished. She was asking if they had found the source of the contamination. The girl was an S-class hero and president of the Heroes Association. She was called the Water Witch. She had almost arrived at the place and asked me to wait for another 2 minutes. At the base of the nuclear plant, the employees were following a girl on a surveillance camera. They saw someone approaching the area at high speed. One of the men was very angry. He did not understand how they had found the place. It was the same people who had dumped the waste into the sea. This nuclear plant was built at the bottom of the sea at a depth of 5,000 meters. The man was sure that no one could get in. At that moment, a loud explosion was heard. A hole was created in the wall of the nuclear plant. Shards of bricks flew everywhere. The culprit of the explosion was a water witch. The girl went inside the nuclear base through a hole in the wall. She finally found what she was looking for. The men did not expect such an intruder. Looking at the girl, they realized from her appearance that she was a water witch. The girl asked how dare they make a disturbance in her territory. The water witch was determined to destroy the entire base and its employees. She began to use her superpowers and scattered the men across the room. The water witch received a call from a wireless TV news anchor about superheroes. He had heard that the water witch was looking for the source of the contamination. The man asked what the situation was now. The water witch had just finished dealing with these people, so they called in time. The girl told them she'd found the plant. She was going to deal with the nuclear contamination later. At the plant, nuclear waste was stored in large glass containers. The water witch was very angry with the actions of those men and told me to make the girl visit the place again. Otherwise, she guaranteed that next time it would be them who would be the first to suffer from the source of the contamination. Joe Shuntian was still watching the broadcast of the now water witch's feats. He admired the heroes and thought how good it was to have superpowers. The guy's monologue was heard by two passers-by. They saw Joe Shuntian's clothes and immediately realized that he was from the animal husbandry school. The girl didn't understand how pets could roam the street, so she offered to teach him a lesson on behalf of the teacher. At this time, another hero flew across the sky. It was a girl in beautiful white robes. She was the ruler of the heavenly realm, Shiwanmu. The girl asked what was happening in this world. Shiwanmu thought all of this was an abomination, and these people were simply horrible. She was sure that they were not worthy of her soul. The girl wondered when she would have a chance to restore her physical body. Shiwanmu watched Joe Shuntian's confrontation with two passers-by. The two were glowing with energy, while Joe Shuntian was not. Shiwanmu thought that she had just found the right vessel. A passing man thought Joe Shuntian didn't belong here. He called him a pet and told him to go back to his shelter. The guy was not afraid of his opponent. He asked if the man had superpowers and if his teacher had assigned too little homework. Joe Shuntian clenched his hands into fists. The guy didn't take into account that these clothes were too conspicuous. Shi-Wan-Mu liked the way the guy behaved. Even in the face of the oppression of the powerful, he didn't admit defeat at all. The girl thought that he had a noble soul like her. Shi-Wan-Mu was about to be absorbed into a guy's body. She wanted to see if he was worthy of accepting the Heaven Realm Sovereign. Shi-Wan-Mu thought that this kid is good, and he even in the face of oppression of the strong does not admit defeat at all. It seemed to the girl that Zhou Shuntian had a noble soul like her. The girl was ready to be absorbed into him. She was going to see if Zhou Shuntian was worthy of accepting her. And these two people were going to use their superpowers to teach the guy a lesson. They thought Zhou Shuntian was arrogant. These people tied Zhou Shuntian to a tree with their magic powers. The boy shouted at them to let him go, for they had already crossed the line with their actions. The girl asked Zhou Shuntian not to look at her. She feels ashamed that they are bullying a defenseless child. The man said that he had recently learned a new technique and was going to try it out on Zhou Shuntian. The guy was startled and thought that he should have just ignored these two. At that moment, the man struck the tree Zhou Shuntian was tied to with his superpower and told him to listen to his command. The power penetrated the tree from the roots to the leaves. The man's strength prompted the mysterious creature. It asked who had disturbed the king's peace. The man had achieved his goal. He laughed and was happy that his plan had worked. Zhou Shuntian asked what he had done. The man was going to make the whole forest obey him. He was very proud of himself. Behind his back, the creature's huge hand reached out to him. This huge monster grabbed the man in one hand, the girl in the other. She asked what the man called out. Everyone was very frightened. This incident helped Zhou Shuntian to get out. The man summoned an S-class monster, the king of the forest. The creature screamed. It needed power. The girl asked him to do something about it. The monster clutched the man in its hand and began to suck all the energy out of him. The monster absorbed the energy it sucked out of the man. However, that wasn't enough for the monster. His eyes lit up and he was going to do the same to the girl. The monster yelled that this power wasn't enough for him to fill in the gaps. He threw the girl's body away and turned his attention to Zhou Shuntian, who was sitting on the ground scared. The guy tried to calm down and hoped that the hero would come to his rescue soon. The monster realized that Zhou Shuntian had no superpowers. He didn't understand what the guy was doing here because it was bad luck. Zhou Shuntian was angry. He told the monster not to look down on him and his powers would just slowly awaken. When they appeared on the guy, then he would kill the monster in seconds. The monster was amused by Zhou Shuntian's confidence. He laughed. It had been a long time since the creature had heard such loud words from bugs like a guy. He lifted Zhou Shuntian up by the scruff of his neck. At this moment, a spell paper flew from nowhere. It was enveloped in super strength. The spell landed directly on the monster. It exploded and injured its arm. The monster screamed in agony and let Zhou Shuntian out of his hand. Zhou Shuntian landed on the ground. He was in a lot of pain from the fall. He almost broke his bones. At this moment, a girl descended from the sky. She was probably the one who saved Zhou Shuntian. The girl's name was Qing Meng. She was from the East and belonged to the 66th generation of Taoism. She asked if Zhou Shuntian was all right. At this time in Mirage City, there was some commotion at the headquarters of the Hero Association. And at the headquarters, all the security systems went off. They noticed that a strong energy reaction occurred in the area of Mount Udan. One of the hero girls asked which heroes could be summoned right now. Her assistant replied that most of the S-class heroes were on assignments right now. Hero Bright Star was on her way back. The girl realized that only A-class heroes were in town now. She asked where Nimble Man and the President were now. She thought they were on a mission in the nearby sea. The aide explained that after Nimble Man was done with his assignment, he went straight to the Windy City, and the President was wrapping up an investigation into the nuclear sewage incident and would be back in 3 days. The girl was surprised that the President would be gone so long. She did not understand what to do in this situation. The girl got angry and said that in 3 days their headquarters would be destroyed. The girl ordered all A-ranked heroes in the city to gather immediately, set up a perimeter to prioritize the safety of the citizens. Qing Meng walked over to Zhou Shuntian and asked with a worried look if the guy was all right. He already thought that he was finished, however. He was saved. Zhou Shuntian happily looked at the girl. The girl was very beautiful, and the guy asked if the firepower was available. The girl thought that she would be punished again at home for interfering. Zhou Shuntian was wrong. Qing Meng doesn't use superpowers. It was the Taoist talisman that helped her defeat the monster. The boy took the talisman in his hands. He was surprised, for it was the first time he had seen such a thing. At this moment, the monster woke up. It was still not completely defeated. The king of the forest roared fiercely. The boys looked at him fearfully. The forest king recovered his damaged arm in a blink of an eye. He was very serious to deal with the girl. He pulled his huge hand towards her and was about to make her bow to the monster. Qing Meng told Zhou Shuntian to stand behind her. The girl was going to use the power of the Taoist talisman again to fight the monster. She threw the talisman with the spell at the king of the forest. A loud explosion sounded. However, the monster was not defeated. Its branches were heading straight towards the girl. It was going to attack her. Zhou Shuntian said that it was useless. No matter how many times it kept attacking, they all spread out. After realizing that the monster could not be defeated by talismans alone, Qing Meng began to use the technique. She turned to the Great Emperor and asked him to grant protection. Qing Meng used the indestructible barrier technique. A magic circle appeared around the guys, which was supposed to protect them. The girl told Zhou Shuntian to come closer to her and not to move. A protective dome appeared above them. The monster couldn't break through it. The Forest King couldn't understand why, despite all his attacks, the guys were still alive. Zhou Shuntian was overjoyed. He exclaimed that these Taoist amulets were simply marvelous. Zhou Shuntian asked the monster if it was really S-class, if that was all it could do. The guy believed that they could overpower it, even without a hero of the corresponding rank. These words made the king of the forest even more angry. He told Zhou Shuntian not to get cocky. The monster decided to use all his power as the king of the forest. Everything in this forest obeyed him. He roared fiercely. Zhou Shuntian's jaw dropped, seeing the monster's true abilities. He only realized that he hadn't fought at full strength before. Qing Meng said that her amulets could only protect against normal attacks, but if this vine hit them, then something bad would happen. The guys thought that the best option was to try to run away from the danger. This moment, the monster with its laza with all its might tried to hit the guys. They succeeded from jumping, but it seems to have hit the girl. The guys fell to the ground. A monster vine picked up from them. At this moment, another girl appeared nearby. She thought that this guy was very weak. The monster finally caught the guys. He held them with his hand and raised them to the level of his face. The king of the forest grabbed them with his huge hand. Now there was no way for the boys to get out of the monster's clutches. The monster began to draw life energy from Qin Meng. The girl had a horrible feeling while doing so. She couldn't believe she was going to die right here in such an inconspicuous place. At this moment, Zhou Shuntian's consciousness moved to some unusual place. He heard a voice that said that he was giving up early. The guy didn't understand who was talking to him. He was lying with his eyes closed. Zhou Shuntian woke up. His head was splitting. He didn't realize what this place was. Well, this guy's place was moved by Xiwanmu. She said that the guy has a talent for cultivation. He should try to become immortal under her instructions. Shi Wangmu said that she is the one who will help Zhou Shuntian get out of this problem. Shi Wangmu asked what Zhou Shuntian thought about it. The guy asked if the girl could defeat that monster. She replied that of course she could. Once the guy allowed her to enter his body to train Zhou Shuntian to cultivate. In that case, the guy would be able to become immortal. It seemed to Zhou Shuntian that she didn't look like an evil being. The guy did not immediately believe Si Wanmu. He asked how the girl would prove that cultivating would make him stronger. First, he wanted to see if she could defeat that monster. Shi Wanmu was furious that Zhou Shuntian dared to doubt her, and if she didn't need to recover her physical body, she would have killed him alive. The girl kept a nonchalant face and explained that cultivation offered many benefits. Zhou Shuntian was still looking at Shi Wanmu incredulously. He asked what kind of benefits the girl was talking about. Shi Wanmu claimed that cultivation purified and calmed the mind, and would also allow Zhou Shuntian to live for 1,000 years, in which case he would have plenty of time to study the world and the true meaning of all things. Zhou Shuntian thought that the phrase of 1,000 years sounded ridiculous, and even if it was true, he had no reason to live that long. However, this was not the end. The guy would be able to control the natural elements, as well as move mountains and divide seas. The power to create or destroy the world would be in Zhou Shuntian's hands. The girl hit the guy with all her might with the ball. She called him a dumbass. Zhou Shuntian only needed to open her mind. In that case, Shi Wanmu would enter and share her power. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand what to do because of his weakness. This girl might die. He thought it was worth the risk to let Shi Wanmu enter his body. The guy decided to agree to the girl's proposal. He asked how he could let Seo Wanmu in. The guy should only relax his body and calm down, and not resist the entrance of So Wanmu's soul. Zhou Shuntian replied that he would do it no problem. He was willing to do anything if she helped deal with the monster. At this time, the Forest King had already massacred Qing Meng. He was about to do the same to Zhou Shuntian. The monster laughed and said that this pathetic little man had been so bold as to say he would stop him. However, Maxim he would get to do it in his next life. At this time, Zhou Shuntian's body was taken over by Shi Wanmu. The guy managed to let the girl into his body. Zhou Shuntian's body lit up with red energy. He was ready to kill the monster right now with Shi Wanmu's strength. The Forest King thought that this was impossible after all. He had to absorb Zhou Shuntian's energy. Zhou Shuntian glared at him angrily. He was ready to use his new strength to fight him. Zhou Shuntian created a red ball and told the monster to die. The king of the forest couldn't move. The king of the forest was instantly burned in the fire created by the guy. He shouted loudly. Zhou Shuntian was still conjuring. Everything around him was red. Shi Wanmu thought that even 10% of her strength would seem unbelievable to a guy. She had a plan for revenge. Zhou Shuntian landed on the ground. He didn't understand where this monster had gone. The guy was confused. It looked like he had come to his senses. Shi Wangmu replied that the king of the forest had been absorbed into Zhou Shuntian's body. The girl said that once the guy started practicing her technique, he would be able to increase his strength. An airplane landed at the Shanghai City School for the Unawakened, and people came in. The school has evacuated the students, but the association has already sent out heroes to protect them. One of the guys wondered where Zhou Shuntian was. The other said that he had probably snuck out. In the neighborhood of the school, superheroes fought monsters in the woods. Superhero, a rank 12th ranked superhero. Fire Executioner participated in this. He used the Phoenix Indulgence technique to defeat these monsters. A ferocious flame appeared and enveloped all the creatures. There was another hero on the battlefield. He had a ferocious look, holding a cigarette in his mouth during the battle. It was an A-ranked superhero, the 10th ranked Lightning Blade. He used his powers. Fire Executioner was bored and wanted to fight the king of the forest. Lightning Blade thought they were out of their league. At this point, something strange started happening to the monsters. They stopped attacking the guys. All the creatures headed deeper into the forest in a flash. The Fire Executioner realized that probably the king of the forest had been defeated. All these monsters ran straight towards Zhou Shuntian. He didn't know what to do with them. The guy decided to use his power one more time. He held out his hand. However, he failed. There was no reaction at all. Shi Wanmu explained that the first time he succeeded only with her help. The guy needed more training. The girl replied that the guy should run faster. He took the girl in his arms and ran away from the monsters. Lightning flashed in the sky, starting a terrible thunderstorm in the forest. Across this lush sky, someone was flying. He was trying to get to his destination faster. It was S-ranked hero Brightstar. He was in a great hurry. At this time, Chen Xingxuan, Nimbleman's daughter, was searching the forest for her bracelet. She wanted to check if her superpowers had recovered. At that moment, a bunch of monsters ran straight at her. The girl looked at them in surprise and became numb. She was scared. The girl didn't understand where these monsters were coming from. Chen Xinyuan started running away from them. She shouted for them not to come closer. Chen Xingxuan was very actively running away from danger. She didn't understand why she was so unlucky today. The girl ran from the monsters with all her legs, trying to save her life. Chen Xingxuan deftly jumped over the obstacles. She really hoped that she wouldn't die there. At this moment, Chen Xingxuan bumped right into Zhou Shuntian, who was carrying Qing Meng on his shoulders. The guy was very surprised. Chen Xingxuan told the guys to move out of the way, for she was trying to run away quickly. Chen Xingxuan couldn't brake in time. She crashed into Zhou Shuntian at high speed. Chen Xingxuan fell the guys to the ground and lay right on top of them herself. Zhou Shuntian was in pain from the fall. However, what warmed his soul was that Chen Xingxuan was lying on top of him directly with her breasts. He really liked this feeling. He thought he was in heaven. The girl apologized. She didn't think there would be anyone here but her. Zhou Shuntian said that there was no time to talk. They were surrounded. Zhou Shuntian thought that since Chen Xingxuan was alone in this wilderness, she was an awakened one. He told her to use her superpowers to escape from the bunch of monsters that surrounded the guys. Chen Xingxuan said that she was awakened, however, she had lost her bracelet. Zhou Shuntian didn't know that there were abilities that needed extra equipment to use. Zhou Shuntian doubted the veracity of Chen Xingxuan's words. He asked if she would definitely be able to kill these monsters with her bracelet. The girl was angry. She declared that it was true, and once she found the bracelet, she would kill those monsters in seconds. The guy said that it was too difficult to look for her bracelet here, like a needle in a haystack. He put Qing Meng on the ground. The guy turned around and said that they were surrounded by monsters. Zhou Shuntian told Chen Xingxuan to take Qing Meng with him, and he was going to take care of those monsters. At this moment, on one of the monsters, Zhou Shuntian saw a bracelet similar to the one Chen Xingxuan was looking for. Chen Xingxuan replied that it was exactly her bracelet, and it was no wonder she couldn't find it since the monster had it. Zhou Shuntian was going to trust the girl. He hoped that she would really be able to kill monsters in seconds. Zhou Shuntian ran straight at the monsters. He engaged in hand-to-hand combat with it to take away the bracelet. The guy's strength was already running low. He snatched the bracelet from the monster and tossed it to the girl. He told her to act. The monster was already consuming the guy completely. It wrapped its branches around Zhou Shuntian. The guy was asking for help. Chen Xingxuan put the bracelet on her arm. She told the guy not to worry, after all, they were safe now. She said that now the guy would see what she could do. She lifted all the monsters into the air with her powers in the blink of an eye. Chen Xingxuan was going to blow them all up right in the air. She snapped her fingers. At this moment, a loud explosion was heard. All the monsters were defeated. Zhou Shuntian watched the girl's strength with astonishment. The guy was amazed. He really liked Chen Xingxuan's strength. He thought it was very similar to the explosion of fireworks. At this moment, new monsters ran up to the scene. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand where so many creatures came from. They ran furiously at the guys. Chen Xingxuan was very confident in her strength. She was going to turn all these monsters into dust. The girl used her powers again. Many explosions were heard in the forest. Now for sure the monsters were defeated. The dust dispersed. The bodies of the monsters lay around the guys. Zhou Shuntian thought that her strength was incredible and it was very powerful. Zhou Shuntian reached for the girl's bracelet. He asked what kind of device it was and if it could also have put on. The girl was embarrassed and said, "Don't even think about it. It was created especially for her and ordinary people can't use it." Chen Xingxuan didn't feel very good. At this moment, the guys felt an earthquake. It was so strong that they couldn't stand on their feet. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand what was happening. In the next moment, the ground under Zhou Shuntian's feet began to crack, Zhou Shuntian falling into the cracks between the rocks. The two boys went under, the two of them screaming as they flew along with the rocks. The two boys went under, the two of them screaming as they flew along with the rocks. At this moment, someone came to the guys' rescue. He sent his Taoist amulets towards them, along with his power. Their savior was Dongfang Chaoxue, Qingmen's father. He asked why his daughter didn't listen to him. Trying to help the guys, he used the levitation technique. Dongfang Chaoxue channeled his power upwards. The boys were up from the holes in the ground in a flash. They were floating in the air thanks to the man's strength. Lowering his daughter to the ground, Dongfang Chaoxue asked if she had forgotten the rules of their family. At the main headquarters of the Hero Association, there was still a commotion. Tina was surprised that the energy source was gone. The girl thought that one of the heroes had defeated the king of the forest. Her assistant noticed that they hadn't received any reports. The girl thought that maybe the monster had gone into hiding. She told them to send a research team immediately, and not to relax until they found the remains of the king of the forest. Meanwhile in the forest, the research team was searching. They didn't realize which S-class hero had killed this monster. At that moment, the investigators noticed Zhou Shuntian and Chen Xingxuan lying on the ground unconscious. They thought the two civilians should be taken to the hospital. The research team took the boys to the city's main hospital. At this moment, a girl was running down the hospital corridor. She had long blue hair that developed from her running. The girl was very excited. She was in a hurry to find out how her brother was doing. The girl hoped he wasn't hurt. She didn't understand why her brother had gone into the forest. The girl was very beautiful, and all the visitors to the hospital looked at her. The girl's path was blocked by two men, one of them asking if she'd come to visit her brother. The men were very insolent. They all wouldn't let the girl in and asked her to stay with them. The girl was very angry, because she was in a hurry to see her brother. The girl made a very pitiful face, and tears came to her eyes. She asked if the men were going to attack the defenseless girl. One of the men thought she was very nice and thought he was lucky today. He replied that they just wanted to chat with the girl. In the next second, the girl punched the man in the chin with all her might and told him to get out of the way. The girl continued on her way to the ward. She reached and opened the door sharply. There was a doctor in the room. He asked if she was related to the guy. The girl shouldn't have worried. He was just a little overworked. Zhou Shuntian was lying in the ward. The girl went up to him and asked him if he had such long hair. She wasn't sure if there was anything wrong with the prune. The doctor replied that the examination results showed nothing unusual, but the guy could stay for a couple days if he wanted. The doctor had to go now. He told the girl to take care of her brother. She thanked the doctor. The girl sat down on the chair beside Zhou Shuntian's bed. She thought it was very strange that her brother was in the forest and came back unharmed. Zhou Shuntian's sister was very excited. If something happened to her brother, she wouldn't ask for herself. It was already time for the girl to go to work, otherwise she wouldn't be able to pay her hospital expenses. She thought it was very difficult to earn money. Zhou Shuntian still hadn't regained consciousness. He was lying on the hospital bed all alone. At this moment, Shiwan Mu came down to him. She was trying to wake up Zhou Shuntian. It was already time for him to wake up and start his training sessions. Zhou Shuntian didn't even realize where he was and where these girls were. Siwang Mu told the guy not to worry about them. The girls were fine. Zhou Shuntian looked around. He jumped up from the bed and realized that he was in the hospital. The guy was surprised. He asked Siwan Mu how long he had been out. The girl said about half a day. The guy felt that he should get out of the hospital. If he stayed here for a couple of days, it would cost him a lot of money. Zhou Shuntian began to put his plans into action. The next day came. The sun was shining outside. The city was bustling with life. The boy lay on his bed. He realized that most likely the hospital bills had sent him to his sister. The young man didn't know what to say when she returned. The guy didn't know how much the hospital bill had cost, but he hoped his sister wouldn't be furious. Shiwan Mu Foundation appeared in front of the guy. She asked why he was sprawled out. It was already time for Zhou Shuntian to start practicing the path of immortality. Shi Wanmu appeared in front of the guy again. She asked why he was sprawled out. It was already time for Zhou Shuntian to start practicing the path of immortality. Zhou Shuntian jumped out of bed and said that he had killed an S-class monster, and if he started cultivating, he would become a superhero. The guy thought that, in that case, his sister wouldn't have to pay all the family's expenses. Shi Wanmu touched the young man's flask. She used her power. The girl wanted to show him something. Shi Wanmu moved them to some magical place where stones were flying in the air, and there was a big temple. Zhou Shuntian asked what kind of place it was. This was the space created by Shi Wanmu. Zhou Shuntian was a beginner, so he needed to enter the qi condensation stage as soon as possible. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand what the girl was talking about, or what qi condensation was. There were 6 stages of cultivation: qi condensation, foundation formation, golden core formation, spiritual formation, soul nucleation, and ascension. Once Zhou Shuntian surpassed the ascension stage, he would become a true immortal. To move to the qi condensation stage, a guy should try to absorb the energy of heaven and earth and fill his body with it. Zhou Shuntian's brain was already opening up from so much information, he didn't quite understand what Shi Wanmu was talking about. The girl noticed the puzzled face of the guy. She realized that he didn't understand anything, and started to explain everything again. Shi Wanmu told Zhou Shuntian to sit in the lotus posture. The boy obediently did so. Now Zhou Shuntian had to close his eyes and feel the energy that was everywhere. It was qi energy. The guy had to absorb it into his body. Zhou Shuntian tried it. He succeeded immediately. The girl thought he was a genius with incredible talent. Zhou Shuntian would become immortal in less than 100 years, and would serve as a great vessel for Shi Wanmu. The girl recalled the events from the past. The man had said that it was time for Shi Wanmu to give up the title of Heaven Realm Sovereign. He said she was oppressing them because they were men. They had had enough. The man's name was Zhou Yang Zhenjun. The girl said he couldn't say that, for many had voluntarily submitted to her themselves. Zhou Yang Zhenjun shouted that none of this was true, and he was going to perform the heavenly judgment today. The man directed all his power towards Shi Wanmu. It reached the girl in an instant. She thought that this was very foolish since she was the ruler of the heaven realm and its path, and she was the law here. Shi Wanmu easily repelled the attacks. Shi Wanmu was angry at the men's disobedience. She believed that all the rebels should die. The girl decided to exercise her will. She directed a large amount of lightning at the men. They screamed and scattered. One of the men told Zhou Yang Zhenjun that she had been a cultivator for millions of years, and they were no match for her. The man was nervous, but said he had foreseen these events. The men just had to follow his plan. Shi Wanmu thought men were nothing. They were not worthy of the heaven realm level. A girl came up behind her. She laughed. Heavenly Orchid told Shi Wanmu that she shouldn't be so angry and these men are very annoying. She made her some heavenly wine that would increase her power. Shi Wanmu smiled. She thought it was very nice of her. The girl was going to destroy men today and make the heavenly realm a world of women. Shi Wanmu happily drank the wine that the Heavenly Orchid had prepared. At that moment, something strange began to happen to her body. Apparently there was some curse in the wine and the girl was poisoned. Heavenly Orchid approached Shi Wanmu. She touched her chest. Her projection flew out of the girl. Heavenly Orchid's expression changed from angry to angry in the blink of an eye, and the girl smiled. She said goodbye to Shi Wanmu. Shi Wanmu lost her physical body. Strange things were happening to her. An astral projection was flying out of her. At this moment, Zhou Yang Zhenjun threw the scroll of writing at Shi Wanmu and shouted, "Now!" This scroll opened up. It began to absorb Shi Wanmu's soul. It slowly sucked the girl in. Shi Wanmu didn't give up. She asked if they thought they could seal the girl with this artifact. Zhou Yang Zhenjun didn't think so, but they had found another way to make it happen. He held the very same artifact in his hands. The man was about to send Shi Wanmu into the abyss. He created a portal there. Zhou threw the scroll directly into the portal. It slowly spun around in the portal. Shi Wanmu shouted something indistinctly. The scroll flew farther and farther into the abyss, never to return. Her soul has been wandering the abyss ever since. After everything Shi Wanmu had to go through to enter this dimension, she wouldn't miss the chance to restore her physical body. The main headquarters of the Heroes Association was bustling with fruitful work. Tina and her assistant stood in front of a large hologram, a computer showing world events. The girl thought it was strange that the king of the forest had disappeared. He couldn't just do that. They were probably letting something out of their sight. At that moment, the assistant saw the hero, Bright Star, flying over the forest. She turned her attention to him. The girl told Tina that she thought she knew who had defeated the king of the forest, and someone had spotted a bright star near that spot. It was probably him. Tina was very excited. The girl smiled and said that she always knew the Bright Star was a real hero. The assistant asked if Tina had ever seen the Bright Star's face. She wondered what he looked like. However, the personal information of S-class heroes was top secret, and even she didn't have access. However, Tina had heard that he was very handsome, also a good man, because the money he earned went to support schools for the unawakened. She asked if she could introduce them. The assistant was embarrassed. She really liked the hero. She told Tina not to joke around like that anymore. The assistant was surprised to see Chen Xingxuan on the casualty list compiled by the rescue team. Tina was very scared. She asked what the president's daughter was doing there, if she was okay. The aide said that the recording shows that she checked out of the hospital and went home. The girl breathed a sigh of relief. They were lucky the president wasn't there, and if anything had happened to her daughter, she would have been furious. It was a clear sunny day outside. The city was bustling with life. Zhou Shuntian's sister did not understand why her brother left the hospital. The girl returned home. She looked around her apartment. Her brother was nowhere to be found. The girl started looking for him. Sister Zhou Shuntian went into his room. She opened the door and was surprised at what she saw. In the guy's room, things were flying everywhere, driven by his power. Zhou Shuntian practiced using his new abilities. The sister thought her brother had finally awakened. She was very happy. Zhou Shuntian said that it was because the girl wouldn't believe in cultivation, so the guy decided that the best way was to lie. The girl realized why Zhou Shuntian's hair became longer. He had gained his ability. The guy laughed and asked if the girl would cut his hair. The girl rejoiced. All she had to do was bring the scissors to fulfill the guy's request. The girl sat her brother down at the chair. She began to cut the hair on his head. The girl said that now that he had superpowers, he could transfer to an awakened school. Zhou Shuntian replied that he had not recovered yet and they had nowhere to rush. The girl replied that the sooner the better. It was close to her work, so the guy would be supervised. The girl didn't want today's events to ever repeat themselves. Zhou Shuntian agreed with his sister. She kept cutting his hair. At this time on the street, someone called out loudly for Shiwan Mu. This person didn't realize where she was. It was celestial immortal Taiban Xingjun. He shouted that this dimension was too big and didn't understand how to look for the girl. He was a supporter of Shiwan Mu. The man believed that all her abusers deserved to die. And the beautiful, graceful Shiwan Mu was worthy of the title of Lord of the Heavenly Realm. The man was like a homeless madman. He was shouting in the middle of the street that when he got the girl back, he would torture Zhou Yang Zhenjun for hundreds of thousands of years. In the man's hands was a golden compass. At that second, it began to rotate. Taiban was very happy that his compass was finally working. He was very happy that Shiwan Mu was in this city, for the man had been wandering in the mountains for too long. He cried with happiness. The Taoist temple on Mount Wudang was calm and peaceful. It was a clear, sunny day outside, light streaming through the windows of the temple. Qingmen was lying on the bed in the temple. Her father was sitting next to her. The girl had just woken up. She didn't understand why she was at home. Dongfang Chaoxu was drinking tea at this time. He asked if his daughter had woken up. Qingmen asked her father what happened to that guy who was with her. The girl was talking about Zhou Shuntian. Dongfang Chaoxue was furious. He asked how dare she ask this. If he hadn't been there, the girl would have been sent to the hospital. The Taoists have been hiding from the outside world for many years, but because of Qingmen's actions, they were almost exposed. The girl was depressed. She apologized to her father and admitted that she had acted rashly. Dongfang Chaoxue said it was good that she was creating her mistake. He told her to never contact outsiders again. The man said that the boy was found by the rescue team and Qingmen shouldn't worry about him. The man had already taken away the ancient scriptures the girl had borrowed. He came up with a punishment for her. Qingmen felt guilty for what had happened. She was willing to fulfill this punishment. The world the characters lived in was never fair. Zhou Shuntian pondered this while brushing his teeth. Some people born into the hero family inherit the abilities of both parents, thus becoming even stronger. And there are orphans like Zhou Shuntian and his sister without any superpowers, and they were helpless and in dire need of heroes' help. Zhou Shuntian became obsessed with superheroes. He constantly watched them on live TV and admired their courage. Zhou Shuntian hoped that he would awaken to become like them. Now, it's not just a dream for the guy. With the immortality cultivation method, he got a chance to change his life. The guy came to the academy for the awakened. He saw near the building the students of this academy. They all had different superpowers. Zhou Shuntian was glad. He said goodbye mentally to his former classmates. He was now a student of this academy, but the guy was going to visit them. Zhou Shuntian held the map of the academy. He found the registration place of the newcomers. Zhou Shuntian walked into this building. There was a large magic ball in front of him. The academy employee asked the students to take a test of their abilities. This device seemed to be measuring the power of awakening. Zhou Shuntian didn't know if it would detect his cultivation. At this moment, 2 cars were flying over the city, and from them, the whole city was visible as from a bird's eye view. Xingxuan was sitting in the car. She was on a video link talking to the water witch. She had instructed Dr. Sam to look into the problems with restoring her powers. The girl agreed with her mom. She explained that yesterday was a fluke. Xing Xuan had almost arrived, so her mom shouldn't have been worried. The car landed. A crowd of people gathered around it. They greeted the car cheerfully. Xing Xuan got out of the car. She said hello to all the fans and wished them a good day. The whole crowd was crazy about the girl. It consisted of mostly men who were fanatical about Xing Xuan. The men thought the girl was very nice. She was not only pretty but very intelligent. Her grades were among the best. One of the men told everyone to disperse to the side and stay out of the way. He followed Xing Xuan. He was Wang Jirong, the son of the richest man. He dreamed of making Xing Xuan his girlfriend. When the lad inherited his father's property, she was to be part of his harem. Zhou Shuntian walked out in the academy building. He exhaled a sigh of relief. He thought that he had passed everything and only had to wait for the results. Zhou Shuntian noticed Xing Xuan on the street. He realized that it was the girl he met in the forest. The guy decided to say hello. Zhou Shuntian ran towards the girl. Wang Jirong noticed this. He thought the guy was chasing Xing Xuan. He was shocked. Wang Jirong told his men to stop him. One of the men was ready to do it. He said to rely on him. The man sent his water power towards Zhou Shuntian's leg. At this time, the guy was running after Xing Xuan. In the next moment, the water force enveloped the guy. He was inside the bubble. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand what was happening. In the next moment, the water force enveloped the guy. He was inside the bubble. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand what was happening. Zhou Shuntian, while in the bubble, asked who they were and why they were using superpower on him. Wang Jirong told him to let him go. Wang Jirong said that Zhou Shuntian was quite bold since he dared to pursue his future wife. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand which future wife Wang Jirong was talking about. One of his men shouted that this girl the guy was following. Their boss liked Chen Xingxuan and everyone in the school knows it. Zhou Shuntian asked, so what if she ignores him? Then it is unrequited love. Another supporter of Wang Jirong explained who the guy was and also explained Chen Xingxuan's status. He believed that this couple was blessed by the heavens themselves. Wang Jirong liked this man's words. He decided to reward him with a bundle of money. His man rejoiced and gratefully accepted the award. He told Zhou Shuntian to apologize to their boss and swear that he would never go near Chen Xingxuan again. Zhou Shuntian was angry. He asked what would happen if he didn't. All of Wang Jirong's people changed their appearance in an instant. They began to use their strength. A crowd gathered around the guys. They thought Zhou Shuntian was a fool for provoking Wang Jirong. They asked if it was a newcomer. Wang Jirong told 3 of his men to deal with him. Whoever is first will get a bonus. A weekend at the boss's villa. The first to go into battle was one of Wang Jirong's men. He was very eager to get the reward. Behind him, all the others flew into the battle. The man with the power of water began to use it again. The other guy had the strength of an enhanced fist. Zhou Shuntian tried to dodge their punches. After absorbing the spiritual energy, Zhou Shuntian's body became very light, and he became very agile. Zhou Shuntian dodged the blow. He saw another person flying at him from the sky. He grabbed the guy by his jacket and lifted him up into the sky. The man had wings. He laughed evilly and said that the boy would feel his power now. He threw the guy from a bird's eye view to the ground with all his might. Zhou Shuntian hit the ground. Dust rose all around and the asphalt cracked. Zhou Shuntian survived. He used energy to defend himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have survived. This man was very surprised that Zhou Shuntian was unharmed. He thought that it was impossible. The guys hadn't seen him use a superpower except for his speed and agility. Wang Jirong was also surprised that he remained intact after falling from a height. He might have a body reinforcement ability. Shi Wangmu appeared in front of Zhou Shuntian and said that it was not bad. He was a quick learner. Zhou Shuntian said that this was a very rare opportunity, and he wanted to find out what was stronger than superpowers or cultivation. Shi Wanmu thought, why not show the guy the difference between cultivation and this abomination of superpowers? Shi Wanmu pointed at the energy coming from the guys. The guy had to feel it as spiritual energy and try to control it. Zhou Shuntian told the men not to waste his time and attack all at once. The man with wings got very angry. He was surprised at such insolence of the guy. The man with water power was furious. He longed to finish him off quickly to get the reward. The third man felt the same way as his friends. He was going to attack Zhou Shuntian. All 3 of them rushed to attack in the blink of an eye, using their strength. In their opinion, Zhou Shuntian would regret it. All 3 of them rushed to attack in the blink of an eye, using their strength. In their opinion, Zhou Shuntian would regret it. Zhou Shuntian was going to use his cultivation power to overpower them. He absorbed the energy of one of the men and used his power to lift the 3 of them into the air. The man didn't understand why the guy was using his superpower. Zhou Shuntian didn't really understand how he did it either. He asked his teacher to explain it. Si Wangmu explained that superpowers use your body's energy to affect your surroundings, just like a magnet. Self-improvement works by using your consciousness to control things around us. Zhou Shuntian thought that this was amazing. He asked if it meant that he was stronger than all the people here. Shi Wanmu explained that this was not the case, and materializing consciousness required a lot of spiritual energy, and right now the guy's capabilities were extremely low. Zhou Shuntian overpowered those three men, with the crowd looking on. He asked who else wanted to fight him. People in the crowd started yelling that it was just awesome and he defeated people with superpowers so easily. One of the men said he'd heard of the guy before. Maybe he's the secret son of an S-class hero. Wang Jirong was angry and said that Zhou Shuntian was very strong, but he demanded that he apologize to him immediately and break off relations with Chen Xingxuan. Otherwise, he was going to make Zhou Shuntian regret coming to this school. He had a technique that was the eye of the future. Zhou Shuntian said those were his words. He started to use his cultivation. At that moment, someone appeared to stop their fight. It was Chen Xingxuan. She said that fighting using abilities was forbidden on the school grounds. Chen Xingxuan recognized Zhou Shuntian. She thought he didn't have superpowers. Xingxuan told Wang Jirong that bullying those without features was forbidden, and she would summon his parents today. Wang Jirong said that it couldn't be that Zhou Shuntian didn't have superpowers. Zhou Shuntian replied that he was right, and since the guy was new to the school, he asked that the incident be forgotten. Chen Xingxuan decided to turn a blind eye since the guy knew she was losing her superpowers. The others she ordered to be taken to the council chair to receive their punishment. Chen Xingxuan told Zhou Shuntian that he would go with her and took the guy's hand. Zhou Shuntian was very surprised and asked where the girl was dragging him to. She replied that since the guy was new here, she would give him a tour. The girl led Zhou Shuntian to the door of their academy's clubroom. Zhou Shuntian was surprised. He asked what the girl was doing. Wasn't she going to show him everything? Chen Xingxuan said that they could talk about it later. There were much more important things right now. The girl was wearing a revealing outfit. Zhou Shuntian was very embarrassed. Strange thoughts popped into his head. Chen Xingxuan asked what he thought. The girl just wanted him not to tell anyone about what happened in the forest. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand after all. The girl was very cool in the forest. Why was there a need to hide it? Zhou Shuntian thought that Chen Xingxuan likes to hold on to the pull. At that moment, the door of the clubroom opened. Right outside the door was Zhou Shuntian. The door was opened by the guy who was looking for Xu Jie. The door jostled Zhou Shuntian. He fell right on top of Chen Xingxuan and kissed her. The guy's hand fell right on the girl's chest. It turned out that he knocked her down. They fell and kissed. In the next chapter, the students of the student council system and the faculty are connected. One of the men showing this. Everyone was surprised by Zhou Shuntian's evaluation of this system. The door was pushed open by Zhou Shuntian. He fell right on top of Chen Xingxuan and kissed her. The guy's hand fell right on the girl's chest. It turned out that he knocked her down. They fell and kissed. The guy who went into the room in the clubroom couldn't find something. He looked around. At this moment, he saw Zhou Shuntian and Chen Xingxuan lying on the floor. The guys were kissing. The guy was scared. He apologized for interrupting and ran away from the room. The guy was surprised that Chen Xingxuan was there with some guy. He thought it was a sensation and had to tell everyone. Chen Xingxuan became embarrassed and told Zhou Shuntian to get off her. The guy started making excuses that he didn't do it on purpose. It was just an accident. Chen Xingxuan said that she would kill Zhou Shuntian if he told anyone about what happened here. Chen Xingxuan turned around and thought that she should become a boyfriend. She couldn't let him walk around and gossip. Zhou Shuntian stood in the room in a stupor. He thought it was dumbfounding. Chen Xingxuan ran out to chase after that guy. She told him to stand still. Chen Xingxuan started to use her powers on the guy. She lifted him into the air. Chen Xingxuan angrily told him to forget about what he had just seen. The guy was scared. He asked for mercy. The guy had already forgotten everything. At that time, a door opened in the student council chamber and someone entered. The man there apologized to Wang Jirong, who walked in. There was nothing they could do as it was an order from the president. Wang Jirong said that it seemed to be true. The man offered his help if he needed it. Wang Jirong felt that the student council should be able to get a list of students who took the entrance test today. The man responded that it is, and the student council's management system is connected to the instructional system. The man activated the system and showed Zhou Shuntian's profile. He had an S rank. Wang Jirong didn't understand how this was possible. Probably the device had malfunctioned, or he had cheated. His type of superpower was not analyzed, but the level of strength in his body was found to be extremely high. One of the guys realized that if he obtained such a rank, he would be placed in the Chen Xingxuan class. Van Jiren asked if they can manipulate the data. The man said there is nothing they can do. The council chair is only looking at these results. Wang Jirong got angry and thought that there were still many ways to throw him out. It was a clear sunny day in this world. The sun was shining, and cars were driving on the highway. Rank a hero. Tsanglan was after her target. Stark, a wanted criminal. She was watching him from around the corner. Stark found the scent of calm disgusting. He stood with his men. He was very angry. He wanted to destroy everything around him. The man felt he needed to calm down and had better things to do now than destroy. Stark noticed something was at his side. The man turned around. Stark thought it looked like he was being followed. There was Sang Lan standing around the corner. At that moment, a cab pulled up to him. The driver smiled and asked if he needed a ride. Stark clutched the cab with his hand. He was very angry. He approached the cabbie, took him by the head, and asked him how dare he talk to Stark. He was going to teach the man manners and set about using his power on him. Stark's tentacles went to the man. They wrapped around his head. Passers-by didn't understand what this guy was doing with the cab driver. They looked at them in surprise. Tsanglan asked all the passers-by to disperse. She was going to help the cab driver. The girl ran up to the cab driver. However, she did not see Stark near the car. The cabbie was already dead. The girl was angry that she had lost Stark and couldn't help the man. The cabbie was already dead. The girl was angry that she had lost Stark and couldn't help the man. Tsanglan thought that Stark had done it again. At this time, he had already merged with the crowd. He smirked because he thought the pathetic A-rank hero was out to get him. At this time, it was a clear, sunny day outside, with clouds slowly floating in the sky. Zhou Shuntian received the results of the entrance exam. He was placed in the A-rank class. His sister, Yunshu, will be very happy when she comes home and sees his results. And as long as Zhou Shuntian was free, he should use this opportunity to cultivate. He wanted to get to the chi refining stage. Zhou Shuntian started practicing his cultivation abilities. He was very focused. It seemed strange to him that he couldn't feel any chi energy. Shi Wanmu appeared beside Zhou Shuntian. She said that there was very little chi energy here, and yesterday, the guy had absorbed all the nearby chi in one fell swoop. If a guy wants to cultivate, he needs to go to a place where nature is well preserved, like the forest he was in. The girl laughed and said that actually the chi that the guy absorbed yesterday she had gathered in the forest beforehand. Zhou Shuntian was surprised that all of his abilities were a trick, and the girl was using tricks. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on Zhou Shuntian's door. Zhou Shuntian thought that his sister must be at work. The guy didn't realize who it could be. Taiban came to Zhou Shuntian's door. He was looking for Shi Wanmu with his compass. Zhou Shuntian opened the door and asked who the man was looking for. Taiban threw himself into Zhou Shuntian's arms and said that it was a miracle that he had finally found him. He called Zhou Shuntian Shi Wangmu. Zhou Shuntian got angry and demanded to let him go. He didn't know who the man was. Taiban still didn't let go of him. Then Zhou Shuntian kicked the man right in the face with his foot. Zhou Shuntian apologized and said it was the man himself who made him do it. At this moment, Shi Wanmu flew out. The man's voice seemed familiar to her. She asked what Taiban was doing here. Zhou Shuntian asked if the man was a friend of Shi Wangmu. The girl replied that it could be said that he was. At this moment, Taiban's soul flew out of his body and flew to Shi Wanmu. He threw himself into her arms. The girl told him to stop being such a crybaby. She asked him where her physical body was. The guy rushed to this world through the spatial portal to save the girl and forgot how to return. Shi Wanmu angrily called him an idiot, because in that case, there was no point in looking for her. The guy was going to help Zhou Shuntian cultivate, because that way Shi Wanmu would be able to recover her physical body. Shi Wanmu believed that with Taiban pills, Zhou Shuntian's cultivation speed would increase very quickly. Their entire dialogue was in astral projections. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand why the Noni were looking at each other and not talking. Taiban noticed that Zhou Shuntian's house was quite large and beautiful. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand what he wanted to say. Taiban hugged Zhou Shuntian and said that they would be one family from now on. Zhou Shuntian slammed the door. There was no way the guy would let Taiban stay in his house. Taiban said that he wasn't staying here for free. He was going to prepare all the pills for Zhou Shuntian's cultivation. Shi Wanmu said that Zhou Shuntian should let him stay. After all, Taiban would help the guy in cultivation. Zhou Shuntian replied that his sister would not agree. Taiban said that right now, it would take Zhou Shuntian somewhere around a year and a half to advance to the chi refining stage, but his pills would allow it to be done immediately. Zhou Shuntian did not believe Taiban. After all, his foundation was not stable right now, and the guy wanted to give him a pill. The Taiban pill was to help Zhou Shuntian adjust his breathing, and it is suitable for beginners to take. Taiban similarly suggested that Zhou Shuntian put on the Taoist garment, which is the ultimate spiritual treasure of their heavenly realm. Zhou Shuntian agreed to accept this treasure and pill. He took them from Taiban. However, Zhou Shuntian did not agree to let the man stay. He kicked Taiban out the door. Taiban didn't realize where he was or where he was going. In this world, he had nothing. Shi Wanmu asked why the guy left Taiban outside. Zhou Shuntian thought that his offerings were too cheap, so he should wait a bit. After an hour, Zhou Shuntian still allowed Taiban to stay. He was to sleep on the floor in Zhou Shuntian's room. Zhou Shuntian told Taiban to never go near his sister's room. Zhou Shuntian asked if this pill was really as effective as Taiban said. At this time, he decided to take a bath. And Zhou Shuntian was about to swallow the pill, however, Xie Wangmu stopped him. The girl said that it was better to take it not here. The guy had to go to the forest, and only with the blessing of spiritual energy would the effect of the pill be maximized. Zhou Shuntian said there is no bus to Wudong Mountain in the afternoon, and cabs are very expensive. Shi Wangmu replied that it was easily solved. She was going to teach the guy a unique flying skill. Zhou Shuntian would be able to float freely in the air. The two of them went to the roof. Zhou Shuntian wasn't sure he wouldn't crash. Shi Wanmu said that if the guy followed the instructions, he would be fine. Zhou Shuntian started to use his cultivation technique. He tried to take off. Zhou Shuntian had it all worked out. He was floating freely in the air. Zhou Shuntian rejoiced that this was really possible. Shi Wanmu took the guy's hand. His sister's coming back at 10 o'clock at night, so they should have hurried. Zhou Shuntian thought that the immortality technique was awesome. The guys were flying over the city. The boys flew to the forest. This place was rich in spiritual energy, so they decided to train there. Shi Wanmu explained that it was an advanced pill, and the guy could absorb the energy without worrying about it affecting his shell. Spiritual energy was used to transform the energy inside the pill. Zhou Shuntian had to use his spiritual energy to activate the pill, and the more energy transformed, the better the result would be. Zhou Shuntian started to do so. He began to transform the energy within the pill. It seemed to Zhou Shuntian that it was very warm, and the power of the pill spread throughout his body, and every time the power in his body became more and more powerful. Zhou Shuntian had moved into some kind of world. He didn't understand how he got here or what the ball in front of him was. Shi Wanmu explained that this orb contained the monster that the guy had absorbed earlier now. He could try to purify it with his spiritual energy. In the balloon sat the king of the forest. He didn't understand what this place was and demanded to be let out. Zhou Shuntian began to use his purification power. Something strange began to happen to the forest king. He shrank into a small ball. Something started to happen to Zhou Shuntian's body as well. He absorbed the monster's energy. Lightning bolts appeared around him. Zhou Shuntian had finally entered the Qi cultivation stage. Shi Wanmu congratulated the guy. Someone came to the forest to the scene of the advent. They thought there was something wrong with the information they got from the Hero Association. Judging from the scene, a battle of this magnitude could not destroy the Forest King to the point where there was nothing left of him. The only way to do that was to use spatial superpowers. Stark arrived at the scene of the battle. He felt that without the remains of the Forest King, the plan of organization would again be delayed. Stark saw rays of light rising straight up into the sky. He sensed a man there. Stark thought that this was indeed a lowly creature. He approached Zhou Shuntian. Stark wanted to have a little fun with the guy, considering he had the misfortune of meeting a man. Stark began to use his strength and attacked Zhou Shuntian from behind. Zhou Shuntian abruptly turned around and slapped Stark's face with his hand. The latter was very surprised. Zhou Shuntian's punch was so strong that it threw Stark far into the forest, dust rising all around. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand who this guy was and why he attacked him. He noticed that the power of his attack was so great. Stark didn't realize who this guy was. He could barely get to his feet. Stark thought he looked weaker than the C-class heroes. He asked how the guy dared to hurt him. Stark was going to kill the guy. He started attacking him with his superpowers again. Stark was going to kill the guy. He started attacking him with his superpowers again. Zhou Shuntian dodged Stark's attack. He asked who he was and why he was trying to kill the guy. Stark jumped on his hands. He was about to strike at Zhou Shuntian. Stark thought that inferior beings didn't deserve to know his name. He spun around and was about to kick Zhou Shuntian with his foot. Stark thought he had been too careless a moment ago. Now the man was going to show Zhou Shuntian his true strength. Stark launched his forces around Zhou Shuntian. There was no escaping them. Stark started to attack him. He hurled his energy at Zhou Shuntian. It reached the guy in no time. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand how Stark not only became so strong, his punches were causing damage to Zhou Shuntian. Stark jumped up and asking if this was all Zhou Shuntian was capable of. He directed energy at the guy with all his might. Zhou Shuntian hit a rock. He asked Si Wangmu why he was having such a hard time defending himself against Stark's attacks right now. The girl replied that when Zhou Shuntian entered the new stage, it caused the power of heaven and earth to resonate, and now it was over. Zhou Shuntian asked her to teach him some techniques. Shi Wanmu replied that for a while the guy wouldn't be able to learn techniques that were too complicated. But the girl had an idea. One day she discovered a great immortal technique that might be perfect for a guy. Shi Wangmu approached Zhou Shuntian. She took his head with her hands. The guy became embarrassed looking at the girl. Shi Wangmu kissed Zhou Shuntian's forehead. She was about to activate his new technique. The girl said the technique is called the finger piercing the clouds, and it will allow the guy to gather spiritual energy around and release it. Zhou Shuntian immediately trained her as soon as the girl put the knowledge into his head. At this moment, Stark jumped high into the sky and was about to attack the young man. Zhou Shuntian was surprised. Stark said that Zhou Shuntian had gotten him once, but his life would end here. He created a magic ball. Zhou Shuntian gathered all his energy. He was going to use the technique that Shi Wanmu had shown him. The guy needed to condense the air on his fingertips. He did so, and was about to attack Stark. Zhou Shuntian's spiritual power surged up in a flash and headed towards Stark. Zhou Shuntian's strength quickly reached Stark. The latter was shocked by the guy's strength. Zhou Shuntian's spiritual energy overpowered Stark. He screamed in agony and glowed with white light. Zhou Shuntian's strength covered the entire globe. It spread over a very long distance. Zhou Shuntian thought that the strength of this immortal technique was so great. Shi Wanmu hugged the guy. The girl was sure he could do it. She really wasn't wrong about him. Shi Wanmu hugged the guy so tightly that he couldn't even breathe. At this moment, the alarm clock on Zhou Shuntian's phone rang. It was 11 o'clock in the evening. Zhou Shuntian took out his phone and looked at it with surprise. It was already very late, and he would not feel bad for being late. Zhou Shuntian, along with Shi Wangmu, ran home so as not to worry his sister. At this moment, Yunshu was playing cards together with Taiban at the table. They seemed to have found common ground. The girl got 4 twos and showed them to Taiban, putting them on the table. Yunshu was very happy. She had won again. Taiban looked at the girl's cards in surprise. Taiban said that didn't count, and their mortals had the advantage of playing games of their own invention. The man offered to play again. Yunshu replied that she could beat Taiban all she wanted. At that moment, Zhou Shuntian walked into the apartment. The guy said hello and said he was back. He was surprised that the guys were getting along so well. Yunshu laughed and told her brother that his friend was very stupid. Zhou Shuntian said that he forgot to discuss it with his sister beforehand, and Tangban would stay with them for a while. Yunshun smiled and said that she didn't mind, and it was fun to have a lot of people in the house. This was the first time Zhou Shuntian invited a friend to his house. Taiban rejoiced at this news. He asked Zhou Shuntian to take care of him from now on. Zhou Shuntian noticed that the girl gave Taiban his father's clothes. The door to their parents' room was closed for a very long time. It seems the girl opened it. Somewhere in the West China Sea, a thunderstorm was raging, waves pounding the island, lightning flashing. There were several people sitting in the castle hall. One girl told the boss that the mission to restore Stark had failed. Stark said that this place is the headquarters of the Hero Association, but it is still very difficult to recover the remains. The girl said that her power was a tree of life, and whoever ate her seeds could determine his condition and location, but he had completely lost his vitals. Stark said the Hero Association guys are trying to ruin his day again. He said to send it to the King of the Deep. The next day, classes were just about to start at the School of the Awakened. One of the students heard that a new student had been transferred to their class today. The other girls knew who he was. They said he could defeat 5 people by himself. The girl knew from rumors that he went to school without supernatural abilities. Yesterday, he took first place among the freshmen. Another student was excited about her new classmate. She thought she should get him. Her friend said that he was already with Chen Xingxuan, and she saw him leaving with her yesterday. Another girl overheard their conversation. She was surprised that Xingxuan had someone she liked. The girl's name was Xia Jiqi. She couldn't miss such a good opportunity. She felt that the guy should be hers. The class was just about to start, and the bell rang. The teacher introduced the new kid in the class, Zhou Shuntian. The guy said hello and introduced himself. He said he was a man who wanted to be an S-class hero. Chen Xingxuan thought that Zhou Shuntian's ambition was considerable, but it was not easy to become a top-class hero. There was an empty seat next to Chen Xingxuan. The teacher said that Zhou Shuntian could sit there. One of the students doubted that this guy had superpowers, since his ghost couldn't feel anything. Today's lesson was a practical monster exercise. Chen Xingxuan had to take responsibility for the new student as she had the highest grades. At this moment, Xia Jiqi raised her hand and turned to the teacher. The girl said that she too would like to meet her new classmate and asked to be in the same group with him. She wanted to steal the guy away. The teacher allowed it. All the students began to ask who this guy was. What was the attention to him? Zhou Shuntian was envious and considered to be of high origin. Wang Jirong was very angry at this attitude towards Zhou Shuntian. He wanted to definitely teach him a lesson. The teacher told the boys to be quiet. They had to go to the field to practice. The practice field looked like a huge hall with a holographic floor and walls. The boys had to take their seats. Zhou Shuntian noticed that there was very little spiritual energy in this place, and he didn't know if he could use his finger piercing the clouds. Xia Jiqi ran up to Zhou Shuntian and clung to his arm. Zhou Shuntian asked who this girl was. Xia Jiqi introduced herself. She smiled and said it was nice to meet you. The girl said that the guy was really cool yesterday and she saw everything. Zhou Shuntian laughed and said he wasn't that cool. Chen Xingxuan approached them. She advised the guy not to believe her bullshit. Xia Jiqi didn't even come yesterday. Xia Jiqi asked how Chen Xingxuan could falsely accuse someone like that because it was so low. The girl said that Zhou Shuntian should believe her, and she really was there and saw everything. Chen Xingxuan clutched at the guy's other hand. She had seen the guy, and as long as she was here, she wouldn't let the girl brainwash him. The 2 girls were fighting over Zhou Shuntian. They looked at each other angrily. Zhou Shuntian didn't understand what was going on. Xia Jiqi asked if Zhou Shuntian believed her. Chen Xingxuan demanded the guy to answer who he trusted more. The teacher said that the exercise would start soon and asked him to prepare for it. Zhou Shuntian exhaled a sigh of relief because he had avoided this showdown. A black ball appeared above the students. Magical energy emanated from it. Similar balloons appeared in each sector where a certain group of guys were. Chen Xingxuan asked which monster they were going to fight. Xiajiqi replied that the monsters were random, and each group had different monsters. At that moment, a monster began to emerge from the black ball, which would be the guy's opponent in this challenge. Long tentacles appeared. Fighting the guys will be an octopus with an ice spine. The monster's ability was C, level, freeze, illusion, regeneration. Upon seeing the monster, Chen Xingxuan realized that it was the one she hated the most. A giant octopus began to attack the boys. They jumped back from his attack. Zhou Shuntian was going to try to use his power. He concentrated it in his finger. Zhou Shuntian used a finger technique. Piercing through the clouds, energy moved towards the monster. The technique used didn't damage the monster. It didn't even scratch it. The girls looked at Zhou Shuntian with disbelief. They were unpleasantly surprised by the weakness of his strength. In this isolated space with weak spiritual energy, this ability works very poorly. The octopus was furious. He raged and started moving his tentacles. Its tentacles were trying to hit the guys. They were moving with great speed. Chen Xingxuan had already gotten those tentacles. The guys all dodged the octopus strike. Zhou Shuntian thought that since he couldn't use his finger, he needed to fight him up close. The guy flew up to the tentacle and cut it in two with his hand. He was going to cook takoyaki out of the octopus. Chen Xingxuan was surprised that the guy didn't know that cutting off the tentacles of the ice octopus was forbidden. After all, it was a well-known fact of monstrosity. A fog appeared all around. The octopus became even more angry. Zhou Shuntian looked around. It seemed to him that there were more tentacles. They were approaching the guy. Chen Xingxuan used her powers and directed them towards Zhou Shuntian. She lifted him into the air and told him to come back here. Once he cut off the tentacles of the ice octopus, he would activate his ghost mist skill, and it was harder to attack him. At this moment, 3 more octopuses appeared in front of the guys. They looked at them in surprise. Xiajiqi told the guy that it was a great attack, but he shouldn't do that again. Test time is limited, and they can't waste any more of it. She told Chen Xingxuan to leave the monsters to her. The girl put on a mask and activated the shadow assassination mode. She ran into the battle. Attacking the octopus weak point was the way to get rid of these phantoms. The girl set about doing just that. Thus, Xiajiqi found a real octopus. She flew at it with the ball, trying to hit it. The girl thrust her blade right into the octopus's eye. However, the octopus was not harmed. It dispersed and the fog reappeared around it. It looked like this octopus was also a fake octopus. Xiajiqi was very surprised by this. The tentacles reached for the girl. The octopus's tentacles grabbed the girl and held her tightly. She screamed. There were 30 seconds left until the end of the training session. The guys had to hurry up. Chen Xingxuan used the octopus explosion technique. Zhou Shuntian did not understand why the girl was blowing up the tentacles. Chen Xingxuan said that the situation will no longer get worse. The weakness of the octopus in his eye. Now the guys do not have time to look for a real body. Chen Xingxuan thought that in that case, she should blow up all the octopuses at once. The girl began to do so. However, her efforts were not successful. Out of the fog showed tentacles that moved quickly towards the girl. The tentacles grabbed Chen Xingxuan along with Xiajiqi. The girls were screaming loudly. Zhou Shuntian was also grabbed. Xiajiqi didn't understand how the octopus became so big, whether it was using an illusion for them to underestimate the enemy's strength. There were 10 seconds left until the end of the training session. Chen Xingxuan thought that it was over, and they had failed the test. Zhou Shuntian cut the tentacles and told the girls not to despair, because there was still enough time. Last night on the way home, Zhou Shuntian asked Shi Wanmu what he should do if the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was very scarce. The girl replied that he should use his own energy. And all this time Zhou Shuntian was accumulating his spiritual energy, it became very concentrated. Zhou Shuntian was going to show the monster his true strength. He would once again use the heaven-piercing finger technique. His energy went straight through the octopus's eye and flew out the other side. Apparently, his strength was enough to overpower the monster. He let the girls go. There was a hole in the wall of the building because of the guy's actions. The guys didn't realize who had such destructive power. Chen Xingxuan praised Zhou Shuntian, but he couldn't believe that he had killed the monster in one move. Xiajiqi was surprised to see such strength from the guy. The trial was over. Group D had the best score. It was Zhou Shuntian and the girls' group. Wang Jirong said that Zhou Shuntian did well, and got a better score thanks to the girls' help. Zhou Shuntian laughed and replied that envy does make people behave differently. Wang Jirong asked, "Dare a guy to play another game with him on the same court in 3 days. If he plays, you have to get out of school." Zhou Shuntian smiled and asked what would happen if he still won. Wang Jirong replied that, in that case, he would kneel down and call him daddy 3 times. Song Lan was sitting at home watching the news. It said that last night, a ray of light appeared in the forest of Wudong Mountain, and many people would share pictures of it. Some net users speculate that this is related to the forest king that recently swooped down on the city. The girl was eating noodles. She was surprised that it was about an S-class monster. She called Marin and told him to help her find out if there had been any major incidents in the mountains where Stark had been showing up in recent months. Qianlan stood up from the table and thought that she should go to the forest first. The girl got on her motorcycle and drove down the highway into the woods at night. She was told over the comms that Stark had been to several cities that had S-class monster attacks, and they all happened before he went there. The girl's hunch turns out to be correct. Stark's organization is working on merging humans and monsters, and he may be trying to recover the remains of the Forest King. The next day came. The weather was warm in the city. Airplanes were flying in the sky. The leaves of the trees were rustling in the wind. Zhou Shuntian returned home, with Qiwan Mu by his side, Tang Ban working at the table. Zhou Shuntian asked if the girl had a better technique, since there were many restrictions on the finger piercing the clouds. Qiwan Mu replied that there was no quick solution to learning immortal techniques. For now, there was too little spiritual energy in the guy's body. Zhou Shuntian asked Tang Ban if he still had the pill that made a guy cultivate quickly. The man replied that such pills could only be taken in a special place or at a low level. Tang Ban gave Zhou Shuntian 2 other pills, one to increase the strength of his techniques, the second to heal his wounds. The guy thought it was better than nothing, took the pills. It was already late. Zhou Shuntian was about to go to the forest to absorb spiritual energy. Zhang Lan found Stark in the forest. She told him that he had been arrested. Stark thought it was the unluckiest day of his life. It took him half a day to recover his body. Zhang Lan started to attack Stark. She shot at him with her gun. He skillfully dodged the bullets. Stark shouted he was in a very bad mood. He jumped up and swung at the girl. Zhang Lan was surprised that Stark had such a powerful strength. She defended herself from the blow with her iron arm. Stark kept getting angry at Zhou Shuntian. The next time the man saw him, he would chop him into pieces. Stark stepped his foot on the back of the Sanglan metal animal and called it scrap metal. Qianlan activated the mark on her hand. It glowed yellow. Her metallic arm also glowed, her magic power activating the mechanism. The girl was about to attack Stark. She signaled to her iron pet. At that moment, the iron creature wrapped its tail around Stark's leg. The other leg it grabbed with its jaws. Stark thought he had just recovered his body but not his powers. Since it was raining, he was going to use a deadly energy tornado. The tornado rose into the air. The ground began to crack beneath Stark. He told the girl to die. The tornado reached Song Lan in the blink of an eye. She was very surprised by it. The man's strength enveloped her hands. Stark said the girl made him use up his life force to use that trick. He was going to suck the energy out of her. At that moment, Stark noticed someone coming, and perhaps it was the support of the Heroes Association. The man decided to retreat. Zhou Shuntian and Shi Wangmu arrived at the scene. They noticed that there seemed to be a fight. Zhou Shuntian noticed Qianlan lying unconscious. He decided to approach her. Zhou Shuntian picked up the Hero Association ID card from the ground, which was lying beside the girl. He realized that she was an A-grade hero. Zhou Shuntian felt Qianlan's pulse and asked if she was all right. The girl had a weak pulse and was badly injured. Zhou Shuntian asked what to do since it was too late to take her to the hospital. Shi Wanmu remembered that Xiao Bai had given the guy a soul salvation pill. It could be given to a girl. Zhou Shuntian tried to give Qianlan pills, but in her condition, there was no way she could take medicine at all. At this moment, the guy had an idea on how to get the medicine into Qianlan's body. The guy thought it would be like some TV show. He took the pills in his mouth himself and kissed the girl. Qianlan woke up in a flash. She blushed and took a breath. The soul salvation pills began to take effect, the energy slowly beginning to heal her. Zhou Shuntian was surprised that the medicine acted so quickly, and the girl wouldn't need much time to recover. At this moment, Zhou Shuntian noticed the girl's iron pet that was nearby. The animal showed Zhou Shuntian a hologram of the one who had attacked them. It was Stark. Zhou Shuntian thought he had dealt with the man. He asked if he had attacked the guys. The pet extinguished. Zhou Shuntian asked if he wanted the young man to follow him. At this time, Qing Meng was in the forest. The girl was picking mushrooms. Her father was out of town again. She'd have to deal with dinner herself. The girl was spotted by Stark. He was surprised that a person without superpowers was in such a place. Stark decided that with Qing Meng's help, he could recover his strength by absorbing her energy. It was a dark night. Strange things were happening in the forest, and battles were breaking out. The steel pet was leading Zhou Shuntian towards their abuser. The young man carried Qianlan on his back. Suddenly, the guy saw a loud explosion. He realized that someone was fighting up ahead. Zhou Shuntian saw Stark fighting Qing Meng. He didn't understand what a girl was doing in the forest at a time like this. Zhou Shuntian put Qianlan on the ground and told her iron dog to stay here and protect her. He himself was going to take care of Stark. At this time, Qing Meng was fighting Stark. She didn't understand how this guy could be so agile. All her techniques didn't hit the man. He wasn't worth letting close. Stark was surprised. He thought this girl was a worthless person. He didn't understand how she could hurl a piece of paper with such force. Stark thought that such a big noise would attract people from the Heroic Association, and he would be in trouble, so he should kill her. Stark threw the tree he himself had uprooted at the girl. Ching-Meng couldn't count on her father coming back now, so she had to deal with it herself. The girl threw the Taoist talisman at the tree. It exploded right in front of her. Stark appeared abruptly out of the dust veil. He was heading towards the girl, wanting to attack her. Ching-Meng didn't expect this. She thought she was in a bad situation. Stark was already closing in on her. He had almost defeated the girl. At this moment, Zhou Shuntian appeared in the sky. Lightning flashed around him. He took Ching-Meng in his arms. The guy said that Stark should go to hell. Ching-Meng didn't expect to see him. She was embarrassed. Zhou Shuntian used his power. He directed a stream of energy at Stark. The latter screamed in agony. Ching-Meng recognized Zhou Shuntian. She was surprised that the guy had become so strong. Zhou Shuntian landed. He asked if the girl was okay. She was fine, but she didn't understand how the guy got here. Zhou Shuntian said it was a long story and asked if the girl still had any talismans. She still has a few. Stark had the ability to regenerate. Zhou Shuntian's trick had absorbed all the energy attached to him. The talisman would help finish him off. Ching-Meng had agreed to use the talisman. She was going to send Stark to the point of no return. The girl used the Taoist talisman on Stark's body. A loud explosion was heard. Zhou Shuntian thought that this should be enough for Stark not to survive. Ching-Meng thanked the guy for saving her. Zhou Shuntian said that there was no need for gratitude, because the girl had also saved him once. He asked why they were always meeting in the forest. Ching-Meng replied that she lived in a Taoist temple and invited the guy home. Zhou Shuntian agreed to the proposal and asked if she could wait for him here. Zhou Shuntian had some business to attend to. He asked to wait for the girl for a moment. At this time, the villains were meeting at the deep sea base. They watched the news. It said that recently passenger ships in the sea near the city had been frequently attacked by mutant monsters. Among them, there are many monsters above level A, and the Hero Association sent Neon Donkey to lead a team to deal with them. The girl with the glasses thought it was a great job, and the next step was to wait for these characters to get themselves to the door. The man with the horns asked if what the girl sent worked. She replied that of course it works and S-class heroes shouldn't be killed. They will extract superpowers from them. The man with the horns replied that he would let them live. The girl had to leave. She would return in a few days to check the results. At this time, Qianlan had already woken up. Zhou Shuntian saw the girl and asked if her wounds had healed. She thanked the guy for not only saving more, but also completing the mission for her. Zhou Shuntian scratched behind his head and asked how the girl knew all this. Her steel dog wrote down everything. Qianlan asked if the guy was a newly recruited hero of the Heroic Association. The boy smiled and said that he was only 16 years old and attended a superpower school in Mihai City. Canglan was very surprised by this. How did the guy manage to kill a wanted S-class criminal? She asked if the guy wanted to join their association. Zhou Shuntian asked her to keep the secret. The guy would still want to study at the superpower school. Zhou Shuntian's true strength is only at sea level, and if he joins the Heroic Association, they will reveal it in a minute. The girl introduced herself and gave the guy some kind of device. With it, Zhou Shuntian can always contact the girl. Qianlan left with her pet and said goodbye to Zhou Shuntian. She told him to go back to her girlfriend. Zhou Shuntian smirked. After all, he didn't even know the girl's name. Zhou Shuntian returned to Ching-Meng. The girl introduced herself. I asked what Zhou Shuntian's name was. He also gave his name. Ching-Meng asked what Zhou Shuntian was doing in this place and who was that strange person just now. The guy replied that it was a long story. The boys came to the Taoist temple on Mount Wudong to visit Ching-Meng. Zhou Shuntian couldn't see this temple from the outside. The girl said that protective talismans surround her house and are not visible to most people. Guy asked Qiwanmu why the energy of the Taoist talismans resembled the immortality technique he had learned. The girl replied that the talisman system was part of the immortal technique. She also noticed that Ching-Meng didn't know any techniques. She only used talismans. Qiwanmu suggested that there were other immortal masters who had overcome the void, come to this world, and taught these things to people. Yonghua sat on the rooftop. He waited for half a day and finally the girl came back. He jumped down from the roof and asked if the girl was Dongfang Ching-Meng. Ching-Meng asked who the man was and how he got here. She pulled out her sword. Yanhua told her to calm down. He's been taught how to bypass these defenses and he's here to deliver a message. Ching-Meng, Dongfang Yunsho's brother, asked him to give his sister a letter. The girl was very surprised. She took the letter from her brother. Yanhua was done there. It was time for him to leave. Ching-Meng asked the man to wait. She asked if he was a friend of her brother. She was interested in how he was doing. Yanhua laughed from the word friend. After all, brother Ching-Meng was treating him like a servant. Yanhua didn't know much about Dongfang Yunshuo. He hadn't seen him for a long time. The man said goodbye. In that instant, Yanhua disappeared and disappeared from the guy's view. Zhou Shuntian asked if this meant that the girl had a brother. She hadn't seen him since he left home a few years ago. Ching-Meng invited Zhou Shuntian to enter her house. The guy sat down at the table. She gave Zhou Shuntian some tea and opened an envelope from her brother. Inside lay a talisman with a very unusual pattern. It was not like anything Qingmeng had seen before. Suddenly, someone's voice rang out, loudly asking where Qingmeng was. It was the girl's father. He never let her have contact with outsiders. The girl was scared that he would see Zhou Shuntian. Zhou Shuntian imagined what would happen to him as soon as Qingmeng's father entered the room. The guy would clearly feel bad in that case. The girl jumped up from the table and said that Zhou Shuntian needed to leave quickly. The guy agreed and asked me to give him a second. He wrote his phone number on a piece of paper. Zhou Shuntian gave the note to Qingmen and told her to call her any time if there was a problem. The girl smiled. She was glad that she had a new friend. Zhou Shuntian quickly ran away. Dongfang Chaoshui walked into the room. He asked what his daughter was looking at. She hid the note behind her back. At this time in the supernatural ability school, classes were in full swing. The teacher explained that every student naturally moves towards the goal of becoming a hero. She was going to elaborate on the superpowers. Superpowers were divided into mental type, strengthening type, and specialization type. The mental type allowed you to control all kinds of things with your will, including the elemental system. The strengthening type allowed you to strengthen yourself or others. Type of specialization is a general term that did not apply to the first two. The teacher asked Chen Xingxuan to demonstrate mental strength. The girl walked up to the board and said her power is relying on her own will to control the things around her. She tried controlling the stationery on the students' desks, but the girl was having no luck. Chen Xingxuan didn't understand why it wasn't coming out before coming to the school. Everything was fine with her strength. Zhou Shuntian looked at her in surprise. He thought that something had happened to the bracelet. The girl tried harder. She screamed for her mental power to activate. In that instant, all the stationery of the kids in the classroom flew into the air. Chen Xingxuan didn't feel like she was using her power, although the stationery levitated. It turns out it was Zhou Shuntian who had lifted them all into the air. He wanted to help the girl. Chen Xingxuan was embarrassed and was grateful to Zhou Shuntian for his help. Sometime after classes ended, Chen Xingxuan walked out into the schoolyard. She didn't understand why her power wasn't working. The girl was going to ask her mom about it. Using her bracelet, she called the Water Witch. Chen Xingxuan began to wait for her mother's answer to her questions. The Water Witch picked up the phone and asked her daughter what was wrong. Chen Xingxuan explained that her bracelet suddenly stopped working. She asked what happened to her dad if he was okay. The Water Witch explained that her father was underwater, and perhaps the underwater environment was jamming the signal. The Water Witch explained that the girl's bracelet needed energy, and the amount depended on the environment. Chen Xingxuan asked her to tell her father to be careful. The Water Witch had finished talking, and was about to discuss with Tina about arresting Nian Dongxia and sending her to help. An hour ago, some exciting events took place in a sea of mirages. The horned villain fought Nimbleman, the hero attacking him with his singing waves. The villain said that the sea is his territory, and here he is invincible. The villain quickly swam towards Nimbleman and was about to attack him. The men fought a duel. They were both strong, and would not yield to each other. Nimbleman thought it was too early, and the power of ranged attacks was weakened. The man needed to think of something else. Nimbleman used the Mind Twin technique. In the blink of an eye, several more projections of the hero appeared. The villain that it would be a bit difficult to capture Nimbleman alive without equipment. He was sending a stream of power to the villain. The one shouted that it was useless, and used the Chaos Tornado technique. The entire ocean could become his shield, and the hero's attacks were useless. Nimbleman asked what ocean it was and swung his fist at the villain. The hero exclaimed that his fist could pierce the heavens. He struck at the villain. From the surface, it all looked like a huge wave, with people from the helicopter watching everything. The villain said hero is really strong, but he didn't even come close to breaking the villain's defenses. Nimbleman, looking at the man, couldn't believe that he really wasn't hurt. The hero thought that if one punch didn't work, it was worth trying 100 punches. The villain was surprised by the hero's speed. He had to hurry to activate the equipment, or it would be too difficult to catch him. The villain used the underwater tornado technique again. The man flew into the air. The villain exclaimed that the fun didn't end there and grabbed Nimbleman by the fist. The hero didn't realize what was happening. He couldn't use his mental power anymore. Nimbleman was caught in the villain's trap. He lifted him up with his strength. He couldn't move. It was a clear day outside at this time, with only a few clouds visible in the sky. It was recess at the superhero school. The school day was almost over. Zhou Shuntian noticed that Qingmeng still hadn't added him. Perhaps he should have asked for her contacts. In the hallway, the guy was spotted by Chen Xingxuan. She asked him to wait. The girl ran up to Zhou Shuntian and thanked him for helping her in class today. Zhou Shuntian replied that the girl had also helped him before, so there was no need to worry. Chen Xingxuan asked if the guy had superpowers before and how exactly he got them. The guy didn't want to tell anyone about cultivating immortality. He awkwardly said that everyone awakens in their own way, and this information wouldn't help Chen Xingxuan. Zhou Shuntian tried to run away. He said that the supermarket was having a sale today and he had to leave. Chen Xingxuan noticed that Zhou Shuntian was acting suspiciously. She felt that he was hiding something. A little later, Zhou Shuntian still hadn't returned home. The sun was shining brightly outside. Chen Xingxuan found out Zhou Shuntian's home address. She flew straight to the windows of his house. The girl was going to hide in his house beforehand and try to find out what Zhou Shuntian was hiding. Chen Xingxuan entered Zhou Shuntian's house through the window. She kept thinking about the best place to hide. The girl looked around in Zhou Shuntian's room. She thought that things around were very strange. The girl thought the guy was using these things to awaken his superpowers. Chen Xingxuan opened one of the sealed bottles. It had an image of a sakura tree on it. A pleasant odor came from the bottle, which filled the whole room and intoxicated the girl. And at this moment, Zhou Shuntian and Xiwan Mu came home. They bought the noodles that Xiaobai likes at the supermarket sale. Xiwan Mu remembered that Xiaobai had gone to buy herbs for alchemy today, and he wasn't home. Some frightening silhouette appeared from behind the door. That person abruptly jumped out at Zhou Shuntian. The guy was startled. This silhouette was Chen Xingxuan. She hugged Zhou Shuntian, called him daddy, and said that he had finally returned. Zhou Shuntian did not understand what the girl was doing in his house and said that he was not her father. Xiwan Mu realized that the girl had most likely accidentally opened Xiaobai's drink. The girl kept clinging to Zhou Shuntian. She said that her daddy hadn't come back for a very long time. Zhou Shuntian tried to bring her back to her senses. Xiwan Mu said that this drink didn't affect immortals much, but ordinary people could get drunk for a whole day just by inhaling a little bit of it. The only way to bring the girl to her senses was to take out the effects of the drink. Xiwan Mu put her hand on the girl's stomach. Xiwan Mu was surprised at what she felt inside the girl. She said that Chen Xingxuan's body had spiritual roots, and her fire root had an affinity with spiritual energy. Zhou Shuntian asked if this meant that she was born with the qualities needed to cultivate immortality. Xiwan Mu said so. Although her qualifications are not as good as Zhou Shuntian, the girl is still a treasure. Xiwan Mu wanted Zhou Shuntian to use his spiritual energy to bring her back to consciousness. This would also show whether the guy's control over spiritual energy had improved. Zhou Shuntian said that he would do it. He looked at Chen Xingxuan with embarrassment. The guy started to remove the effects of the drink from the girl's system. Xiwan Mu said that she had also been watching the girl for a while. She is not a bad person. When she wakes up, Zhou Shuntian should have told her about immortality cultivation. The process was not a quick one. Zhou Shuntian had been draining the effects of the drink out of the girl for a while. A few more minutes passed. The girl still hadn't left the guy's apartment. Zhou Shuntian as promised told Chen Xingxuan everything about cultivating immortality. The girl was surprised that there was such a thing as immortal power in addition to superpowers. Chen Xingxuan exclaimed that she wanted to learn. After all, she had always relied only on her father's superpowers. She was tired of it. Xiwan Mu said that now that Chen Xingxuan had agreed, they could start the first step. Chen Xingxuan can't see Xiwan Mu's soul body yet, so the girl was going to borrow Zhou Shuntian's body. Xiwan Mu had become possessed by Zhou Shuntian. She told Chen Xingxuan not to move. Xiwan Mu in Zhou Shuntian's body touched Chen Xingxuan's face. The girl was embarrassed. Xiwan Mu in Zhou Shuntian's body kissed Chen Xingxuan on the forehead. It transported the girl to another world. It was as if everything in it wasn't real. Chen Xingxuan didn't understand what this feeling was. She felt like something was sprouting inside her body. Chen Xingxuan finally awakened the immortality cultivation in her body. She came to her senses. With this, the girl was finally able to see Xiwan Mu's spiritual body. Chen Xingxuan said that Xiwan Mu was very beautiful, and asked if she was the master Zhou Shuntian was talking about. Zhou Shuntian asked if the girl could see her. Xiwan Mu said her plan worked. Chen Xingxuan asked what it was just now and what she saw when she was unconscious. Xiwan Mu said that she had revitalized Chen Xingxuan's divine consciousness, and the spiritual roots in her body had also been activated. Chen Xingxuan ran up to Xiwan Mu, hugged her, and asked her if she could use the immortal technique now. Xiwan Mu said that it was still early, and such things couldn't be rushed. She gave the girl a book on the Flying Star Spirit Sword technique and advised her to study it first. Chen Xingxuan's eyes sparkled. She thanked Xiwan Mu for helping her. Zhou Shuntian looked at his watch. It was already late. He invited Chen Xingxuan to stay for the dinner he was going to cook himself. Chen Xingxuan stayed for dinner with Zhou Shuntian and his sister. They all sat down at the table and were ready to start eating. The food looked very tasty, and there was a variety of dishes on the table. Chen Xingxuan tasted the treats. She liked them very much. The girl said Zhou Shuntian's cooking was very tasty. Yunxun told Chen Xingxuan to eat slower and not choke. Chen Xingxuan said that she hadn't had dinner with anyone in a long time, and when you eat with someone, your appetite increases. Zhou Shuntian asked Chen Xingxuan where her parents were, why she wasn't having dinner with anyone. The girl huffed and replied that they are very busy with their work, so they don't have time for their daughter when she is home. Only the robot nanny is with her. Zhou Shuntian thought it was too tragic that there was only a robot with her. The guy thought that the character's family life was very happy. However, it turned out not to be like that. Yunxun told the girl that she could come here and spend more time with them. Chen Xingxuan agreed, for she needed Zhou Shuntian's advice on many matters. The next day after dinner, the boys watched the news about the disaster at the Hero Association. Several heroes had gone irrevocably to destroy the King of the Depths, including Nian Dongxia, S-level hero of the 3rd rank. Zhou Shuntian asked if the presenter was talking about Chen Xingxuan's father. The girl didn't understand when it happened to him, and why her mom didn't say anything about it. Chen Xingxuan replied that the Hero Association was knowledgeable, and they would find a way to solve the problem. The girl turned off the TV. Zhou Shuntian and Chen Xingxuan were practicing cultivation, with Ji Wangmu watching their progress. The girl was very worried about something. She didn't have her face on because of the excitement. Shi Wanmu noticed this. She told Chen Xingxuan not to get distracted. After all, she must concentrate. Chen Xingxuan asked how long it would take to enter the qi cultivation stage, and if she could take one of the pills to speed up the process. Shi Wangmu told the girl not to try to take a shortcut. The pills have a side effect. The consumption of spiritual energy is doubled. Chen Xingxuan understood everything. Zhou Shuntian was surprised by this information. He asked why Shi Wanmu didn't tell him this before. Shi Wanmu replied that this side effect was not that important and it would automatically disappear after the guys built their foundation. Zhou Shuntian and Chen Xingxuan continued to cultivate immortality in their room. At that moment, Xiaobai teleported into the room. He was carrying a huge backpack on his shoulders. Shi Wanmu asked if he had found all the ingredients. The man replied that he had found all the ingredients and that an elixir capable of increasing spiritual energy levels would soon be made. The last ingredient was Wen Lingji. It was also obtained by Xiaobai. Xiaobai noticed Chen Xingxuan. He asked who this girl was. Shi Wanmu replied that it was her new student. The girl asked if Xiaobai had any magical treasures to give to the girl for protection. Xiaobai lied that he didn't have anything. He needed those magic treasures to steal the herbs, so he couldn't give them away. Shi Wanmu pinched the man's cheek and said that he couldn't hide anything from her. She demanded the magical treasure. Xiaobai gave away the invisibility jade. It can be used to hide one's form. It is very useful for escaping in case of danger. The girl thanked Xiaobai. She thought that with this treasure, she had a chance to save her father. The girl stayed late at Zhou Shuntian's house. She got up on her board and rushed home. At this moment, someone called on Chen Xingxuan's bracelet. She picked up the phone. The water witch called her, asking her where Chen Xingxuan was now because their housekeeper said she hadn't returned yet. Chen Xingxuan replied that it was none of her business where the girl was. She asked why her mom didn't tell her about what happened to her father. The water witch felt that telling her daughter wouldn't solve anything. The girl should have just been obedient and gone to school. Chen Xingxuan got angry and asked what she meant by saying that after all, the girl is the daughter of a hero. Chen Xingxuan didn't want to talk to her mom anymore. She cut off the connection. The water witch was very worried about her daughter. She asked her not to pass out. Chen Xingxuan passed by her father's poster. She was used to being underestimated, but now her own mother was doing it. Chen Xingxuan felt that she had to prove to everyone what she could do. She took out an invisibility jade. Daughter of a hero was a label that had been hung on Chen Xingxuan since birth. From a young age, she was raised with high expectations. She was expected to be better than the average person in every way. Although Chen Xingxuan had always tried to prove herself, she had never been able to live up to everyone's expectations. Now even her superpowers are suddenly gone and she can only rely on her father's superpowers every day, which were encased in her bracelet. Chen Xingxuan didn't want to live under the sign of her parents' fame. With her newfound immortal skills, she was going to save her father. Chen Xingxuan boarded the submarine. She had spent a month learning to drive in the previous summer vacation. The submarine dived deep into the ocean. The girl was determined to find her father. Under the water was a secure base of villains who kidnapped Nimble Man. The horned villain slept peacefully in his pajamas in his bed. Chen Xingxuan was on the submarine. She finally spotted the underwater base on her monitor. Chen Xingxuan was going to carry out her operation in style. She pressed the big red button. Several underwater bombs flew out of the submarine. They headed towards the base. The submarine bombs reached their target. They exploded but did not breach the barrier. The base staff thought it was an enemy attack. All the guards ran out and rallied to fight back the attackers. Also, the power instability needed to be fixed. The guards didn't understand how dare such a small ship attack their base. The entire squad moved towards the submarine. Chen Xingxuan at this time used the jade to get inside. She became invisible and sailed past the guards. Chen Xingxuan swam to the protective barrier. It had weakened and would not be able to stop the attack. Chen Xingxuan didn't understand why such a weak barrier was needed. Chen Xingxuan was going to infiltrate inside the base to deal with the villains. The girl easily defeated the two guards that stood in her way. She didn't realize where exactly Nimble Man was being held. This base turned out to be surprisingly large. Fortunately, Chen Xingxuan got their information. Her father should have been on this floor. The girl looked at the map of the building. Chen Xingxuan opened the door to the room where Nimble Man was to be kept. Chen Xingxuan saw her father tied to a huge holographic wall. He was unconscious. The girl was very frightened to see her father in such a state. She wanted to save him. Chen Xingxuan used the airblade technique to rescue her father from the barrier. The blades struck the glass behind which the hero was held, but they could not penetrate it. Chen Xingxuan was serious about recovering Nimbus Man. She tried again and again. At that moment, a villain with horns entered the room. He was very angry that the girl had disturbed his beautiful dream. The next day, the school had classes for students with superpowers as usual. Zhou Shuntian thought that it was strange that Chen Xingxuan still hadn't come to class. Perhaps the girl was sick. Zhou Shuntian was approached by Xia Ji. She asked if the guy would wait for her. Chen Xingxuan didn't come to school today at all. Zhou Shuntian was very surprised by this. This kind of behavior was not like Chen Xingxuan. Xia Ji thought that the girl wasn't feeling well after learning that her father was missing. Xia Ji sat down on the desk and slyly said that as long as Chen Xingxuan was gone, the guy belonged to her. Zhou Shuntian motioned the girl over. He asked when he managed to become her property. Zhou Shuntian went outside. He was sure that Chen Xingxuan would never miss class. Xie Wangmu noticed that the girl was often distracted at practice yesterday. Zhou Shuntian thought that she had gone to save her father, however. She couldn't even use her superpowers right now. Xie Wangmu felt that the jade energy that Chen Xingxuan had gotten last night was already far away from here. She must be really careless. Zhou Shuntian was scared. He is sure she can't do anything alone. The guy decided to go save her. Xie Wanmu said that they should first go back to Xiaobai and put on the Taoist robe and borrow the other talismans, otherwise Zhou Shuntian would only have to rely on luck. Zhou Shuntian listened to Xie Wanmu's advice and set off in full gear to help Chen Xingxuan. Xie Wanmu flew beside her. They were approaching the place. Xie Wanmu told Zhou Shuntian to be careful when he entered the battle and not to let himself be killed. Zhou Shuntian dived under the water. He swam towards the base. After putting on the robe, Zhou Shuntian could breathe normally underwater and his movements were not restricted at all. Zhou Shuntian saw the base. Zhou Shuntian took the red ribbon in his hands and was about to test this treasure in action. The guy decided to wreak havoc underwater. He swung the ribbon and gave it his power. A water vortex rose up around. This was the power of the immortals' treasure. This underwater anomaly was spotted at the base. They thought it was another hero attack. The base guards looked into the surveillance cameras. They saw Zhou Shuntian waving the tape underwater. The tape consumed a lot of physical energy to use. Zhou Shuntian was tired. The identification of the base system failed. Zhou Shuntian was not from the Hero Association. The guard was very surprised. The man didn't understand where the guy got that kind of power if he wasn't a hero. The other guard smiled and said that since he wasn't a hero, they would finish him off immediately with a water cannon. He was about to press the big red button. At that moment, a villain with horns entered the room. He stopped the guards. The man himself wanted to deal with this guy. The guards were very surprised by such an initiative. This was the first time the man had ever met someone with such control over the sea. He wanted to see who was the true king of the deep. Zhou Shuntian was still launching water tornadoes into the base. He made a lot of noise and didn't understand why no one had come out yet. Zhou Shuntian noticed that something strange began to happen to the water. It changed its direction. Zhou Shuntian decided to swing the ribbon once more and launch a water vortex. At this moment, a villain with horns swam at Zhou Shuntian. He was surprised that such a lowly person could shake the sea. The villain decided to start attacking Zhou Shuntian. He launched his forces towards the guy. Zhou Shuntian was surprised at such a fast speed. To control the water currents, one would need to expend a lot of energy. A little more, and he would run out of it. The villain created water oculus with his powers and directed them towards Zhou Shuntian. The guy defended himself with a barrier. He directed the water sharks back to the villain. The latter was very surprised at such an unusual technique. The villain didn't understand how it was possible that the guy had directed his attack against himself. The villain realized that Zhou Shuntian doesn't use his superpower like other heroes. It's probably some kind of supernatural power. Zhou Shuntian pointed his red ribbon at the villain and demanded the immediate release of Chen Xingxuan and the heroes he had captured. The villain grabbed the ribbon. He realized it was the key to his power. The villain was surprised that at such a young age the guy decided to go it alone. The villain created water snakes with his power. He advised the guy to give up this boring dream of becoming a hero. Zhou Shuntian realized that this villain's strength was great. The water snake headed towards Zhou Shuntian and tried to bite him. Zhou Shuntian said that since the villain wants it, the guy will give him a red ribbon. The villain thought that without this thing, Zhou Shuntian wouldn't be able to control the flow of water. The horned villain tried to tear the young man's red ribbon, but he failed. This was Zhou Shuntian's plan for him to take the ribbon in his hands. At this moment, he began to use his strength. At Zhou Shuntian's command, the ribbon wrapped the villain in a cocoon in an instant. The guy was already thinking that he had won. However, in the next moment, the cocoon began to gradually unwind, the villain bursting out of it. The villain swam out and said he couldn't be stopped with a simple rag. Zhou Shuntian was very surprised that his plan didn't work. The villain swam towards Zhou Shuntian and touched his chest. He was going to use a technique, the Dragon Claw Swing. The villain's reception didn't work on Zhou Shuntian. He couldn't believe that there were no injuries on the guy. The villain began to try his technique again and again. He punched the guy's chest numerous times. Zhou Shuntian was surprised that these were S-level attacks. It wasn't enough to hit the guy. Now it was Zhou Shuntian's turn to display his skills. He swam into battle. Zhou Shuntian swung his ribbon again to get the villain. Zhou Shuntian thought that the villain's weapon was too powerful, and it was necessary to cast a spell and trap him. The treasure alone couldn't help him. Xi Wangmu was worried about Zhou Shuntian. She told him not to go near there. There was something there that restricted the flow of the guy's spiritual energy. A protective barrier had appeared in the water, and once Zhou Shuntian entered this spell, he would not be able to use his immortal power, and could only rely on magic weapons. The villain was still trying to wrestle the guy down. He said he wouldn't leave. It was no wonder that with such a barrier, all these heroes had fallen here, however. As long as Zhou Shuntian was wearing the robe, he could not die, and he had one more trump card up his sleeve. Zhou Shuntian still decided to go inside the barrier to rescue the heroes. The guy thought he was doing what he had to do. He smiled slyly. The villain pointed the water dragon at the guy. He believed that Zhou Shuntian had been caught. Zhou Shuntian was going to first pretend that he couldn't use his weapon so that the villain would catch him. Zhou Shuntian did as he intended. The dragon attacked the guy. The guy laughed and said that even though he couldn't use his weapon, the villain still wouldn't kill him. The villain said that the lad could not escape, for without powers he was weaker than a fish in the sea. The villain used a water balloon to catch the guy. Zhou Shuntian pretended to be surprised by these actions. The villain will allow Zhou Shuntian to see for himself what these heroes look like after they lose their powers. The villain grafted Zhou Shuntian into the guarded room and told him that he would stay here. Tomorrow the villain was going to show the kid how these heroes lose their superpowers. 5 minutes later, the outside of the room was empty. The guy was going to turn this base upside down. It's time to use the magic bracelet to get out of there. Zhou Shuntian threw the bracelet into the air and told it to open. The bracelet went off in a flash and a passage opened in the wall. Zhou Shuntian stepped into the portal in the wall. He looked around and thought that this was a good thing. Zhou Shuntian threw the bracelet into the wall of another room again. He was looking for his friend. However, there was no one in this room either. He wondered where Chen Xingxuan was. There were 2 heroes sitting on the first floor in room A. They realized that something was blocking their abilities. One of them was S-class hero Shi Miao. His sister was an S-class hero, Sai Ren. The girl thought that without abilities, they wouldn't be able to get out of there. The girl was very upset that she hasn't aired in days and she might lose her fans. Zhou Shuntian kept trying to find Chen Xingxuan. He applied the bracelet on one of the walls. Zhou Shuntian saw these 2 heroes in this room. He thought that they were ordinary people and was going to rescue them later. Zhou Shuntian only had 1 room left to check. It was the largest. He threw the bracelet at the wall of the room. Behind it hung Nian Dongjia, tied to the wall. Nimble Man also saw the guy in the wall. The man was still alive. Zhou Shuntian was very excited. He had finally found what he was looking for. The hero woke up. He asked who the guy was, if the Hero Association had sent him to save the man. Zhou Shuntian replied that he was Chen Xingxuan's classmate, and he was here to rescue Nian Dongjia. The man wasn't feeling well. He interrogated the guy about who he was, if this was his superpower. Zhou Shuntian replied that it was. He asked if Nimble Man knew where Chen Xingxuan was being held. The hero was pissed. He didn't know his daughter was here too. He was going to get out of this trap and make them pay. Zhou Shuntian was going to help him. He wanted to throw a bracelet at the barrier. The barrier was unusual. Zhou Shuntian couldn't break it by himself. Plus, if Nimble Man gets out, it will cause alarm. Right now, the hero couldn't use his powers, and if the guy saves him, he'll only be a liability. The man said that he had an important assignment for Zhou Shuntian, and since the guy had managed to sneak in here, he would definitely handle it. Zhou Shuntian was determined. He asked what he should do. Inside this base was some kind of device that disables superpowers, and if Zhou Shuntian breaks it, the heroes can escape. Zhou Shuntian wondered where this device could be located. Nimble Man knew it required a power system, and there would be heavy security near the device. The guy would have to destroy the electrical system directly. Zhou Shuntian understood everything. He went to fulfill Nimble Man's task. The guards near the unit were drunk. They were going to sneak in and have a good time. The guards thought that one of the heroes was a popular woman, and she was much better than the girl their boss caught last night. Drunken guards walked into Siren's cell and beckoned the girl to go have fun with them. Siren was very angry. She wasn't going to go with these men. The guards said that now, without her powers, she was just a weak woman and couldn't resist them. Shi Miao stood up for his sister. He said that he would not let these animals harm her. One of the guards kicked the guy. Shi Miao flew aside. The guard said they should have fun with an S-level heroine today. It's a delicacy. The other guards agreed with him. They looked at the girl with a smile. Siren called them shameless. The girl swung her foot at the guards. The man said that the more the girl resisted, the more they were pleased. He grabbed Siren's leg. At this moment in the wall of the room, Zhou Shuntian opened a portal with his bracelet. He He flew over to the guard and punched him in the face. He flew off to the side. Zhou Shuntian asked if it was normal for a security guard to abuse a mother like that in front of her child. Sai Ren became very angry upon hearing these words from Zhou Shuntian. She screamed and asked who the guy called mother. Was she really that old? Her brother asked the girl to calm down. Zhou Shuntian said that time is precious, and we need to deal with this group of guards first. The kid threw her magic bracelet at them. It knocked 3 guards down at once. Sai Ren realized that there was a treasure in the guy's hand, but he shouldn't have that much strength to use it. Nothing would bother the two of them now. Zhou Shuntian had created a new communication channel where they would always be able to contact the guy. Zhou Shuntian gave the girl a walkie-talkie. She thanked the guy and asked if he was a member of the Heroes Association. Zhou Shuntian replied that he was just a student who happened to be passing by. The guy had other things to do and had to go. Zhou Shuntian opened a portal in the door with a magic bracelet and dived in. The portal in the door was already closing. Sai Ren was very surprised that Zhou Shuntian just left like that. All the actions of the guys were broadcast on the cameras of the underwater base. The guards had to see that the 2 heroes had escaped and Zhou Shuntian had helped them. However, there was a security guard asleep at the camera control panel, and he was not watching what was going on. Another man came into the room with the cameras. He saw that his colleague was not performing his duties. The man punched the guard in the head and asked who allowed him to sleep on the job, because none of these heroes should escape. The guard saluted the man. The man walked over to the camera screens and looked at them. On one of the screens, the man spotted Zhou Shuntian sitting around the corner. He didn't understand how Zhou Shuntian had managed to escape from the cell. The man was going to check it out. He told the guard to raise the alarm and report it to the boss immediately. Above the young man hung a camera that showed all of his actions on the guard's screen. The other 2 caretakers were chatting amongst themselves. They were bored and wanted to go have some fun. Zhou Shuntian finally found which room to go to. It was right behind those 2 guards. At this moment, the alarm in the entire base suddenly went up. Everything around was glowing red. Zhou Shuntian was surprised. The guards noticed the guy. They had automatic rifles in their hands and ran towards him in a flash. The guards noticed the guy. They had automatic rifles in their hands and ran towards him in a flash. Zhou Shuntian thought that there was nothing wrong with it. After all, he was strong. The guy threw his magic bracelet at them. The bracelet knocked down one of the guards. He flew away from the guy. Zhou Shuntian rejoiced. He used the same technique again and threw the bracelet at the second guard. The man screamed in pain, the bracelet hitting him right on his torso. Zhou Shuntian successfully dealt with the 2 guards. They lay defeated on the corridor floor. Zhou Shuntian headed to the door he was interested in. He opened it. The guy entered the energy equipment room. He thought it was exactly the right place for him. Zhou Shuntian looked at the large device. He thought that all he needed to do now was to destroy it. Suddenly at that moment, a security guard attacked the guy from behind, yelling at him to go to hell. The guard was armed with a spear. He tried to impale the guy with it, however he felt an obstacle in his way. Zhou Shuntian was defending some kind of protective barrier. The guard couldn't break through it. The Lord of the Depths thought it was very strange. He was examining Zhou Shuntian's red ribbon in his office. The material of the cloth obviously wasn't much different than normal, but the man didn't understand why it was so stretchy. The Lord of the Depths thought that the people from Cthulhu would send some expert today. They had studied extensively in this area and would provide answers. The villain believed that it was impossible to make the sea do whatever he wanted with just a piece of cloth. At that moment, the man noticed the general alarm. A siren screamed. He did not realize what was happening. One of the guards ran into the room to see the Lord of the Deep. At this time, his boss was having fun with the red tape in the room. The guard was surprised at this sight. The Lord of the Depths relieved. He asked what was the matter and what had happened. The guard said with a frightened look that the child who had been seized had escaped. The villain was very angry. According to him, this guy couldn't even use his superpowers, so how could he escape? The Lord of the Depths told all the soldiers to stay in their places. He was personally going to check everything. The man walked down the hallway angry. He couldn't believe this guy went to the power equipment room. Maybe he knows the secret of this place. The man thought that if the heroes ran away, Cthulhu's men would skin him, so he should stop Zhou Shuntian. The guard who fought Zhou Shuntian didn't understand why the guy could still use superpowers since their device worked. Zhou Shuntian smiled and looked at the guard. He was about to reveal his secret. The guy said he was a bug and threw the magic bracelet right in the guard's face. The bracelet also hit the superpower suppressor device as well. Multiple explosions sounded. Zhou Shuntian was very pleased with himself. He felt that the task was completed, and the heroes could now be saved. At that time, a submarine was approaching the submarine base. There was a girl with glasses sitting in it. She thought it was strange that the border of the device had disappeared, and it shouldn't be like that. Also on the boat were May Kate and Chi Ersi, members of Cthulhu. They had thoughts that the captured heroes might have escaped. The girl with glasses replied that the situation had changed. She ordered Chi Ersi to go with her to check the device, and May Kate to check the heroes. The girl with glasses along with Ki Ersi went to test the device, a superpower suppressor. Ki Ersi walked to the door that opened the room and placed his palm to identify. There appears to be a malfunction in the power system. The girl ordered the power to this device to be restored immediately. She hoped the heroes hadn't noticed the return of their abilities. Ki Ersi said to provide it to him. He used his strength to bring back the electricity. Electric discharges erupted all around and everything was glowing. This was the man's power. In the next instant, an explosion unexpectedly sounded. It threw Ki Ersi away. The girl with glasses was very surprised. She didn't expect this at all. The culprit behind the explosion was Nian Dongxia. His powers had returned to the man. He had finally found those behind it. The girl said to leave Nimble Man to her, and Ki Ersi was to capture the other heroes. Ki Ersi understood his task and began to carry out the girl's orders. Nimble Man flew straight at the girl. He wondered if she could stop him. She replied that it was hard to say that for sure. The girl used the technique of the Stones of Life. Zhou Shuntian was on the second underground floor of the base. He searched all the floors, but he never found Chen Xingquan. At this moment, from behind the guy's back, the Lord of the Depths was about to attack him. Zhou Shuntian noticed that something was wrong and danger was approaching him. The villain threatened that this time he would break the guy's limbs so he couldn't escape again. The villain activated his power and aimed it straight at the guy. Zhou Shuntian didn't expect this, but he looked at the villain with surprise and thought about what to do. Zhou Shuntian still managed to react quickly and duck down. He was unharmed. The Lord of the Depths was angry that the guy had dodged his attack. Zhou Shuntian wanted to take the villain to another place. He said that he would have to catch up with him first and ran away. Zhou Shuntian threw his bracelet at the wall and ordered him to open a portal. Zhou Shuntian jumped into the portal in the door. The villain was surprised that this kid could still use the ability. The villain smiled slyly and thought that was just enough to kill him. Zhou Shuntian walked out on the second underground floor of the base through the portal. His portal in the wall closed following the guy. The guy was surprised by what he saw. There were Sai Ren and Xi Miao fighting against the wanted criminal Mei Kate. Zhou Shuntian didn't know who they were fighting against. The guy looked at it in surprise. Sai Ren revealed who Mei Kate was. She was rescued from the prison island by the Cthulhu organization. The girl used arrows and a bow for her attack. They were heading towards the perpetrator about to attack her. Mei Kate couldn't believe there were people here who didn't know her. Zhou Shuntian ran away. He hadn't dealt with the Depth King yet, and there was another problem. Mei Kate noticed Zhou Shuntian. She said that there seems to be a small mouse there. The girl suddenly attacked the guy with her spine. Zhou Shuntian dodged it. Xi Miao shouted to Zhou Shuntian to be careful. He sent his forces to help him. Xi Miao made a protective barrier between Zhou Shuntian and Mei Kate out of ice. Xu Miao excitedly asked if Zhou Shuntian was injured. Zhou Shuntian was grateful to the guy for saving him. He replied that he was fine. Mei Kate was angry that her attack didn't work against Zhou Shuntian. Sai Ren told Zhou Shuntian to be careful and warned that this woman was very fast. Zhou Shuntian thought that it looked like they needed to find a way to restrict her movements. At this moment, an idea came to Zhou Shuntian on how to implement this plan. Zhou Shuntian threw his magic bracelet at her. It flew straight at the criminal. Mei Kate felt that Zhou Shuntian was no threat to her. She easily repelled the bracelet. However, she didn't realize what this magical device was capable of. The girl wondered. The power of the bracelet began to envelop the perpetrator. She could not resist it. The bracelet sucked Mei Kate inside her and trapped her there. The girl couldn't move. Zhou Shuntian shouted to his allies that they could now attack her. Xi Miao concentrated and directed his ice attack at Mei Kate. Sai Ren did the same. She quickly threw arrows from her magic bow at the criminal. Mei Kate was restrained by Zhou Shuntian's bracelet. She couldn't dodge the hero's attacks. Ki Ersi was already running to help his friend. He heard the sounds of battle coming from behind the door. The hero's attacks were so strong that Mei Kate punched through the wall and flew outside. Right behind her was Sai Ren. The girl knocked him down as she flew. Zhou Shuntian was very satisfied that the guys had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. The villains were lying on the ground unconscious. Zhou Shuntian told his bracelet to return. The villains looked at him in surprise. Xi Miao and Sai Ren didn't understand what was going on either, and who this guy with such strength was. Xi Miao couldn't sense any superpower from him, but he could use such unexpected techniques. At that moment, a loud explosion was heard in the hallway, a wall exploding. Zhou Shuntian looked in the direction of the explosion with surprise. He had not expected such a turn of events. The King of the Depths had broken through the wall. He had finally found Zhou Shuntian. Zhou Shuntian was afraid that they had made a lot of noise and this villain had found him. Sai Ren said the guy doesn't have superpowers and isn't a member of the Hero Association, so he should just stay behind them. Zhou Shuntian thanked and said that on the battlefield, the opponent wouldn't let him go, simply because he didn't have superpowers. Especially since the Overlord needed Zhou Shuntian, he packed up and went straight to the villain. The guys thought that this guy was really impressive. In that case, Xi Miao asked Zhou Shuntian to let him help. The guy started attacking the villain with his ice technique, but he fended off all attacks. The King of the Deep told not to stand in his way. The villain threw the lad off with his power. Zhou Shuntian was the next to enter the battle. He declared that the villain was now his. The guy used the cloud-piercing finger technique to attack the opponent. Zhou Shuntian's strength went through the villain and blew away everything in its path. It was a very powerful attack. Zhou Shuntian was surprised that he had actually done this. However, the villain was not defeated. He said that the guy forced him to do this. The man had really underestimated Zhou Shuntian. The Lord of the Deep turned into a huge dragon that wanted to eat the boys. Sai Ren told her not to stop and keep attacking. She and her brother started using their techniques. They sent ice blocks and arrows straight to the monster, but they were ineffective. The dragon's scales were too strong. It couldn't be penetrated by their strength. In the next moment, the dragon directed the ball of its power towards Zhou Shuntian. He would not have time to dodge. Unexpectedly, Zhou Shuntian protected Sai Ren. She stood right in front of the guy and took the entire blow on herself. Sai Ren was badly injured. Zhou Shuntian ran up to her and asked if the girl was okay. On the ground also lay Shi Miao. The two of them were both defeated. The guy did not understand what they should do. The guy had two options. He could give the villain his weapons and tell him his secret, in which case the villain would kill him quickly, or he could cut off his limbs so the guy couldn't use these things. Zhou Shuntian asked Jie Wangmu for help. He asked if there was any other way to use this bracelet. The girl replied that the bracelet has other uses, but if the guy uses it, he will be severely depleted. Zhou Shuntian doubted Jie Wangmu's words. He didn't want to lose to his opponent and decided to use the bracelet after all. At this moment, two bracelets became two bracelets in the guy's hand, and they glowed with yellow flames. Zhou Shuntian threw them at his opponent and said that he would have to give his life to get the guy's stuff. The dragon said the thing wouldn't work on him. He was confident in his powers. Zhou Shuntian fiercely looked at his opponent. He declared that this was not the end. The guy started throwing duplicate bracelets at the dragon. The dragon laughed and said there was no use duplicating them. The guy wouldn't even be able to lay a finger on him. Zhou Shuntian smirked slyly and asked how about 10. At this moment, there were many times more bracelets. They all flew at the dragon, trying to do damage to it. The bracelets bound the dragon's body so that it could move no more. Zhou Shuntian applied a lot of strength and energy to overpower his opponent. The guy was exhausted. The bracelets were squeezing the dragon's body harder and harder. The one asked Zhou Shuntian to stop. Shi Wanmu thought that Zhou Shuntian was clever, and he had the idea of using duplicates to trap the King of the Deep. Zhou Shuntian's aura was overwhelmed, his legs were pumping up, but he refused to let go of his opponent. The King of the Depths shouted. He felt that he had to kill Zhou Shuntian. Zhou Shuntian was going to see if the dragon would kill him first, or if he would instead twist it himself. Shi Wanmu stopped the guy. She said that this dragon had a strong aura, and if he signed a spiritual contact with it, it would be of great benefit. Zhou Shuntian said that his opponent had two choices. Either he would be Zhou Shuntian's spiritual beast, or turn into a mashed meat. Zhou Shuntian intensified the pressure of the bracelets for the dragon to give a response. It gave up and agreed to sign the contract. So he wanted to pretend to obey Zhou Shuntian and then find a chance to defeat him. The boy set about using his power to make a contract with the King of the Deep. Everything around him began to flicker yellow. The contract began to be signed. Zhou Shuntian had completely subdued the King of the Depths. He had saddled him and was very happy about it. At that moment, an explosion sounded in the door of the room. Someone had blown it off. It was Nimble Man, carrying the girl with glasses he had defeated in the previous battle on his shoulder. Zhou Shuntian was very happy that Nian Dongxia was fine. Nimble Man moved the other men to safety. He thanked the guy for his work. He was going to take all the villains to their headquarters. Zhou Shuntian was very happy that everything ended well. He thought that the man was worthy of being his idol. Suddenly, something whizzed by Nimble Man's side. The man had no time to react. Blood spurted. Nian Dongxia's arm that you ripped off and took the girl from his shoulder. Zhou Shuntian was in shock. He didn't know what to do or what had happened. The guys were attacked by a girl with a heart in her eye. She said she didn't want to open her hand, but the S-class hero turned out to be fragile. Nimble Man was trying to heal his wound. The man was bleeding and didn't know what to do. Zhou Shuntian ran to Nian Dongxia in a flash, the guy asking if the man was all right. Nimble Man shouted at Zhou Shuntian to stay back. This woman was very strong. The woman was smiling slyly. She was holding an unconscious girl with glasses on her shoulder. Nimble Man was surprised that she was able to appear behind his back unnoticed. The other heroes were injured. The guys needed to finish this fight as soon as possible. Nimble Man began to attack the woman with his surviving arm. He created a vortex. The woman attacked the hero back, yellow energy emerging from her hands. She absorbed Nimble Man's energy. The woman had the ability to control magma. Thus the woman defeated Nimble Man. She said the first hero is ready. The woman put the girl with glasses on the floor. She was still unconscious. The woman angrily said that there were still 2 heroes left. She walked up to Shi Miao and was about to massacre him. However, her attack was repelled by someone. A glowing power appeared. The girl was surprised. Zhou Shuntian entered the battle with her. He told her not to dare to do so. Behind him stood the King of the Depths. Zhou Shuntian angrily shouted that it was now his turn. He was determined to win this battle. The woman laughed. She didn't understand how a helpless rat like the guy ended up here. Zhou Shuntian told his dragon, Xiao Hai, to save these two, and he would find a way to save Nian Dongxia. The dragon obeyed its master. It roared loudly and sprang into action. The dragon took Sai Ren in its jaws and tried to carry her to safety. He shouted to the bad woman to go to hell. The huge paws of the dragon from above were approaching the woman. She started attacking the dragon with magma and said that the pawn should do as it was ordered. The magma was very hot. The dragon screamed in pain as the woman scorched it. Zhou Shuntian told the dragon to return. It ran to Nimble Man's aid. The dragon understood him. He vanished in a flash and avoided reprisal for himself. A woman appeared right in front of Zhou Shuntian. She asked what the guy's name was. Zhou Shuntian was surprised at how quickly she appeared. The woman said the guy's eyes reminded her of a couple surnamed Zhou whom she killed 10 years ago. She threw their bodies into the car like garbage. It was as if the guy was electrocuted. He was stunned and remembered the events of 10 years ago. All this time, the kid thought his parents had died because of a car accident. But in fact, Cthulhu's people, in particular this woman, are to blame for their deaths. Zhou Shuntian became furious. He said that the woman had better clarify what she said. The woman moved behind the guy's back in a flash. She leaned over to him and asked him what would happen if she didn't. At that instant, an incomprehensible force appeared behind the woman's back. The woman turned around and looked at her. The woman shifted in the blink of an eye. She dodged the force and hung in the air. The woman shifted in the blink of an eye. She dodged the force and hung in the air. The woman was attempted to be attacked by Nimble Man. He could barely stand on his feet. However, he did not bother to fight. The man told the guys to leave and leave the battle with the woman to him. Zhou Shuntian said that Nimble Man had a very serious injury, so he should let him fight. At this moment, Xu Miao enveloped Zhou Shuntian's body with his strength. He apologized and said that it was for the guy's safety. He dragged Zhou Shuntian behind him to the door. The guy said that they should come back alive. Zhou Shuntian demanded to untie him. He asked if Nimble Man wasn't their fellow hero association. How could they leave him behind and run away? Xi Miao cried as he ran to the door. He said that the guy has not forgotten any of this, but he knows exactly what the duty of a hero is. The guys are all running out of power. If they stay here, they'll all die. Xi Miao turned around and looked at Zhou Shuntian. He said that right now, the guys were too weak to face such an opponent. Zhou Shuntian was in a stupor. He all realized that his idol might die soon and sacrificed himself. The woman fought the hero. She used her magma power and said that no one could escape from here. Nimble Man created multiple copies of himself as the boys ran for the exit. Nimble Man and all his copies bravely ran into battle. They attacked the woman with their power. The hero asked him to tell his daughter to remember to eat on time and not to be upset if she can't use her abilities. The man said that as long as she had a brave heart, she would still remain a hero. Zhou Shuntian still wanted to stay there. The guy gritted his teeth. He was very angry at himself and the villains. The guy said he would be sure to pass this on to her. The battle was very fierce. The woman fought Nimble Man, but her strength was too great. Nimble Man was defeated. He was chained to a large iron cross and immobilized. The woman sighed and said she let a couple mice go. Her boss would pick on her again. Evening came. The boys were now safely on the ground. News was breaking about the hero's kidnapping incident that had been going on for many days. The Hero Association sent reinforcements and destroyed the deep sea base. The announcer said that with the exception of Nian Dongxia, everyone had been successfully rescued. Zhou Shuntian listened to the news together with her sister. Yunshu placed her brother's peeled apple on the nightstand next to the bed. Zhou Shuntian hadn't uttered a word since he returned and continued to be in this state. The girl was very worried about his condition. Zhou Shuntian kept thinking about Nian Dongxia. He couldn't come to his senses. Zhou Shuntian kept replaying moments from the past, Nimble Man's noble sacrifice in his mind. Zhou Shuntian thought he was too weak and blamed himself for abandoning the hero. Shi Wanmu asked if Zhou Shuntian was going to be discouraged like this forever. The guy replied that ever since he started learning the immortal technique, he had discovered that it was more powerful than superpowers. The boy thought there was nothing in the world he couldn't achieve. He never thought about his own limitations. Zhou Shuntian felt that if he continued to be reckless like before, he wouldn't be able to protect anyone. Zhou Shuntian asked Shi Wangmu to teach him how to become stronger. The guy was determined. Zhou Shuntian came to Chen Xingxuan's room and gave her father's last words. Chen Xingxuan replied that her father is really a fool and really likes to show off. Zhou Shuntian said that there are so many great heroes in the association, and they will find a way to save her father. Chen Xingxuan said that there was no need to comfort her. She was going to rest and asked to be left alone. As soon as Zhou Shuntian walked out, the girl clutched her plaid in her hands. She clearly wasn't fine. The girl was very afraid and worried about her father. Her mental state was very unstable. As soon as Zhou Shuntian walked out, the girl clutched her plaid in her hands. She was clearly not fine. The girl was very afraid and worried about her father. Her mental state was very unstable. Chen Xingxuan kept recalling moments from the past with her father. He often came home late because of his exploits. He was always saving people. Even on her birthday, Nimble Man came already at night. He promised that next year they would definitely blow out the candles together. The girl was upset then, because her father said this to her every year. She thought her daddy just got in trouble every day. Nimble Man smiled and replied that it was his duty to protect each of them, and he hoped that one day his daughter would realize that. The man thought that responsibility was the glory of heroes. Chen Xingxuan clutched the blanket tighter and tighter. The girl began to cry very bitterly for her father. She couldn't stop her emotions. Chen Xingxuan screamed that her father was really a complete fool. Zhou Shuntian was standing outside the chamber door. He heard Chen Xingxuan crying. The guy turned around and told Shi Wanmu that they should go and do some cultivation. Shi Wanmu was going to be stricter with Zhou Shuntian when the time came. He shouldn't shout that he was too tired and couldn't take it anymore. Zhou Shuntian agreed. The guy was very angry and decided to destroy Cthulhu once and for all. Zhou Shuntian and her mentor returned home together. She asked why the guy was slowing down. He shouldn't have stopped. At this time, the guys were practicing. Zhou Shuntian was doing push-ups while Shi Wanmu was sitting on him. Zhou Shuntian said that his mentor was too heavy. The girl didn't think so. Shi Wanmu was forcing the guy to train under super high pressure these days. The girl couldn't believe that the young man could bear it. The girl told Zhou Shuntian to stand up. She was going to teach him something. Shi Wanmu snapped her fingers. They were in her spirit world and flew upwards. The girl was going to teach Zhou Shuntian a unique secret technique, the tactical immortal technique. Zhou Shuntian didn't know what it was. One use of this technique was that one relies on a spiritual contract to translate the powers of the imprisoned beast into a spiritual power that the guy can use within himself. However, there is a limit to signing a contract with his current development, and the more contacts signed, the harder it will be for a guy to hold back, and they will just tear it up. The second use is direct absorption. The stronger the object the guy absorbs, the more spiritual power he will gain. However, this is followed by more risk. Shi Wangmu suggested to try. Zhou Shuntian had to try using spiritual power to attract hundreds of balls of spiritual energy to himself like a magnet. Zhou Shuntian should also be able to nourish all those balls into himself. The guy was very confident in his abilities. He started to try out the new technique. A few days later, Zhou Shuntian and Wang Jirong were scheduled to duel in the dueling arena at the superpowers school. Wang Jirong told Zhou Shuntian that he had been missing for so many days that he thought the guy was hiding to avoid their argument. Zhou Shuntian apologized and said that it was very difficult to remember the garbage. Wang Jirong should have stopped talking nonsense and started to act. Wang Jirong said that in such a case the guy would cry out in fear. He had studied hard in the past few days and fully utilized his money power to defeat Zhou Shuntian. Wang Jirong's ability allowed him to summon a powerful ghost beast of equal strength at the cost of money. His budget for today was 100 million. The young man summoned a huge monster. This was the first time his subordinates had seen the boss summon this thing. They couldn't even imagine how much it cost to control it. This beast was immune to physical attacks. Wang Jirong's monster struck the ground with all his might. Zhou Shuntian managed to recoil. The guy was trying to dodge the monster's repeated attacks. The guy was pounding the ground with his fists. Zhou Shuntian tried to defend himself. The monster attacked straight at the guy's forehead and was very powerful. Wang Jirong told the guy that he shouldn't just run away. It was better to start fighting. Zhou Shuntian realized that this guy was too tough, and it was impossible to use an immortal technique to absorb him directly. In that case, Zhou Shuntian was going to first cut the monster into pieces and then devour it. Zhou Shuntian used his immortal technique to chop the monster into pieces. He chopped off its arms. Wang Jirong was shocked at such a guy's strength. He didn't know what to do. Shi Wanmu was very pleased with Zhou Shuntian's result, for he quickly realized that the monster's weakness was in the joints. Zhou Shuntian kept chopping down the monster. He was sending out waves of his energy to hit the opponent. The monster was chopped into small pieces, its arms, body, and legs flying off. Next, Zhou Shuntian was going to use the chaotic eater technique. He created a ball of energy in his hand. The energy from Zhou Shuntian's ball headed straight towards the monster's remains and began to consume it. Wang Jirong was shocked to see Zhou Shuntian so strong. He clearly didn't expect his opponent to be so powerful. Wang Jirong only had to watch as Zhou Shuntian devoured his monster to the last bit. The guy smiled and said that it was a pleasure to fight Wang Jirong. Viewers were surprised that a transfer student who got a grade of S on the test defeated the monster. They thought his superpowers were very strong. Shi Wanmu remembered how she and her boyfriend practiced the new technique. Zhou Shuntian was in spiritual space, a ball of energy flying above him. Zhou Shuntian had one last ball of spiritual energy left to absorb. He was going to do it no matter what. The guy did his best to master the new technique. The ball flew to his hand. Zhou Shuntian looked at his hand, and it was that last ball of spiritual energy. The guy was very excited that he was able to do it and learn a new technique. Shi Wanmu said that the guy did a good job, and now he can rest. Zhou Shuntian asked the master to add another 100 balls next time. He needed to double his practice. Shi Wanmu was very surprised to see such a confident and determined guy. Zhou Shuntian has not only mastered the Taoist technique in a short period of time, but his strength is much more stable than in training. Zhou Shuntian defeated Wang Zhirong. He said that the guy seems to be unlucky. The winner was determined. Zhou Shuntian said that the previous punishment of calling him daddy was cancelled, and he didn't want to have a son who couldn't fight. Wang Zhirong was extremely angry at Zhou Shuntian's words. He wanted to take revenge on the young man. The guys watching him were talking and saying that he had lost all his money and reputation, and it looked like his parents didn't recognize him now. Wang Zhirong was very upset about his defeat. It was a blow to his ego. Someone has landed on Cthulhu's experimental base over the North Sea. This creature flew directly to the experimental base. It had wings. Cthulhu's boss Isogda was standing at the base. He said the flyer was 2 minutes late. The creature that landed was the King of Gravity, an S-class monster. He said he was very busy. If it wasn't for Miss Mona's face, he wouldn't have even come to this place. Isogda got angry and said that the monster should know that he was never in the habit of waiting for anyone. The King of Gravity got angry and turned away from his boss. Miss Mona suggested the monster take a look at the plan. She was sure he would be interested in seeing it. The plan was to create chaos to make Natsu Island disappear. The monster found the plan interesting. However, such a dangerous mission would cost them 3 times the normal cost. The King of Gravity believed that the chaos he would create would definitely shake the world, and then the eyes of the world would be fixed on him. The King of Gravity said that if the plan succeeded, he hoped Miss Mona would keep him company and wouldn't mind having a drink with him. The girl replied that if he could handle it, she would think about it. She adjusted her glasses. The King of Gravity flew away and said that he would be preparing and they only have to wait for good news from him. Miss Mana asked the boss after the mission was over if she could gouge his eyes out. The boss agreed. Meanwhile, in Cthulhu's lab, Nimbleman was being tortured and electrocuted. They tried to extract his superpowers, but the hero kept using his psychic power to resist it. Isogda said everyone needs to remember that there is no room for error in their program. The woman with a heart in her eye said that she met a teenager who was something like Dr. Joe, and she thinks there is some connection between them. The girl's name was Anna. The boss grabbed her by the neck and asked her if there was any information leaked during the operation. Isogda said with an intimidating look that her head would be on her neck for now, and she should go and deal with it. Otherwise, he would take it off the girl's neck at any moment. A few days later, the summer island weather was hot and the sun was shining brightly. Xiajiki was sitting on the beach and sunbathing in the sun. The girl was wearing a swimsuit. She felt that Chen Xingchuan had changed a lot since she recovered from her loss, her energy becoming steady and more focused. When the teacher set the task of destroying rank B monsters, she accomplished it in just 2 days. Chen Xingchuan told Zhou Shuntian that she would go surfing. The girl happily ran into the water. Zhou Shuntian only needed 1 day to finish the task. Xia Jiqi thought that something must have happened between these two. Shi Wanmu told Zhou Shuntian that this nearby mountain was very rich in spiritual energy, and he should go there to cultivate. One of the students told Mia to look over there. There was a Chinese-style gazebo on the summer island. The girl was Shinmia's twin sister and the daughter of the world's prime minister. Her sister, Twin Shindia, said that her blazing eyes could see through 1,000 miles, and she couldn't be wrong. The girls walked towards the gazebo. Zhou Shuntian was sitting in the gazebo. He was practicing his cultivation skills and was all wrapped up in energy. It was very difficult for Zhou Shuntian to stay focused in this heat, as his robe didn't dissipate the heat, and the gazebo wasn't cool enough. At that moment, snowflakes sprinkled from the sky. The guy was very surprised since it was summer. After another second, the whole place froze and blocks of ice appeared around the gazebo. Shindia and Shinmia were running towards the gazebo. The girls noticed the gazebo. At that moment, a storm began. Waves raging on the sea, lightning flashing. Daya slipped on the ice while she was running. The girl got very scared and lost her balance. She flew straight at Zhou Shuntian. The latter shouted at her to be careful and was about to catch her. Zhou Shuntian caught Dia by the shoulder. He apologized and said he didn't touch the girl on purpose. Zhou Shuntian asked if she was okay and what kind of earthquake it was. The guy thought it was all strange. A thunderstorm raged all around. The island slowly rose from the water into the sky. Vacationers on the island did not understand what was happening. They noticed the island was rising. People were screaming for help. The King of Gravity was behind it all. He had flown to the island and was going to put his plan into action magnificently.